So what happens if you look at, and Florida's got a great election system, you could sign on almost like an hour-by-hour basis and see Republicans turn out and voting. And what you saw was that Republicans were exceeding their early vote margins in most counties.
Hey guys, this is Bram Song. I'm here to stream the election results going on with the United States presidential election of 2020. Please keep it clean and chat. You go cheer on your candidates, whether it's Biden, Trump, Jorgensen, or any others. But please keep it clean. Keep it nice. This is not a place to cuss, curse, or do racist remarks or anything. You don't like a candidate, you gotta say that also, but please keep it clean and cordial. Have a good day, and let's hope it works out good for any of them. So, here it is live.
There is, and you've got the urban areas will come in first, and then the rural areas will lag behind that. And so what we're going to see initially in Georgia, and that's why I was trying to gather as much information as I could before I came on the air with you. Yeah. But in Georgia, the fact that they already have Trump with a 60% chance of winning means that they have set some thresholds in Atlanta. That's, let's say hypothetically, Biden had to get 65%. He's only at 58. I'm making that up. It's something along those lines, yes, to be able to adjust those numbers down. And that doesn't just speak well for President Trump, but it speaks well for Tom Perdue. It's well for Senator Perdue.
David Perdue, yep.
Who are running for re-election to the United States Senate from Georgia, which is a big part of Republicans holding a majority in the United States Senate. So Georgia sort of has an outsized importance, not just on the presidential level, but also for Republicans holding the Senate. And right now, if these numbers hold true throughout the evening, the rural votes come in the way we expect them to, then that speaks very well for President Trump and both Loeffler and Perdue.
That's amazing, especially because one of these fantasies has been not only for Texas to turn blue, but before that, Georgia. And Biden spent a lot of time there, and it seems like maybe not going to work out for him. Big picture question, as we're watching results come in, is that going to be the flow of the results? So first we're going to see it kind of be blue with the urban districts, and then the country, rural districts kind of trickle in. Is that how that's going to look for every state or no?
It is. I'll give you another example out west where polls aren't closing yet is Nevada. I do a lot of work in Nevada. I've watched it as it has evolved over time.
It don't matter what side you are on.
First, Democrats ran up a big margin.
I won't allow any Black Lives Matter propaganda. I will not allow any Antifa, KKK, white supremacy, or any sort of racist remarks during this.
And then now
so please keep it cordial, keep the
day, and Republicans throughout the day, I have looked at about an hour, have led in Clark County.
If your candidate loses,
heavily Democratic
keep
area.
it down.
Republicans have led consistently throughout the day in terms of
I
overall
want this cordial
turnout, and that is
or you will be banned.
If that had happened in 2018, Senator Heller would still be a member of the United States Senate, and Adam Laxalt would be governor. And so you could see a situation there where you've got Dan Rodheimer, former World Wrestling Association. I think he was a champion, but he was at least a wrestler for a while. Originally, everything ties back to Florida. Played football at South Florida. Who is challenging Susie Lee in a seat that Republicans held until 2016, and he's got a real chance to win that back. And I think it also speaks to maybe a changing of what's going on in Nevada, where you've got a governor who's locked the state down and people revolting against that. And I think the Democrats are going to see a lot of pushback to their lockdown policies trickle down, not just at the presidential level, and they may not be able to take it out on Governor Steve Sisolak right now, but they're going to vote out Democrats down ballot potentially because of that.
Yes, and which I think brings us to Michigan. Chris, can you stick around for one more segment? Do you mind if we take a quick break and we can get a quick little update on some numbers, and then we'll come back?
Absolutely.
Because I want to jump a little bit ahead later in the night and talk about the Midwest states. Pennsylvania, but I think Michigan, Wisconsin, and even Minnesota, perhaps. We can do a quick run through of all that. All right, Chris Wilson, Ted Cruz's former data guy. Wilson WPA. Follow him on Twitter all night long to get the latest updates with Chris Wilson. All right, we're here on the first. We'll be right back with more of Chris. Spread the word.
Hey guys, Buck Sexton here. If you love watching my show on the First TV, then make sure you stay connected with us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Parler. You can even watch us on YouTube. Stay connected and stay informed with First TV anywhere and everywhere. We'll see you there.
Looking for an email you actually want to read? We've got you covered. Sign up for the Up First newsletter only from The First. Every morning we deliver the day's essential headlines and prepare you for what everyone will be talking about. Plus, you'll also get instant analysis and real facts, helping you cut through the liberal mainstream media spin. Don't wait. Sign up for the Up First newsletter right now at the...
See if anything else is running. I'll just go back to that channel. Check this one out.
Business traveler, the future of mice.
This is a tipping point for our industry, a revolution.
How we gather, the game is changing.
Wow.
Okay, there's no sound.
Other participants.
Mixing virtual and live.
The extended reality experience.
Meetings, incentives.
We have a box of goodies. Ooh, what's in it?
Conferences and exhibitions. Mice reinvented. Alden X. CNN Business Traveler.
Saturday on CNN.
Okay, that's weird.
A mask can say a lot about the person who wears it.
Scene's looking okay. I just saw something weird on the Fox thing about Virginia. Okay.
And this is CNN.
They're already calling a Vermont race called. Only 7% in. You can't call the race.
Vermont. He beats Trump in Vermont. 3 electoral votes. So let's take a look at the map where it stands right now. The race at 270. Trump has 11. He won in
7% people have gone in, and they're now just saying it's live.
From the biggest wave of poll closings in the presidential race, we're counting down to the top of the hour, 8 p.m. Eastern. That's when the last polling places close in Alabama, Connecticut, Delaware, the District of Columbia, Florida, Illinois.
Check the other coverage.
Just before the break, those numbers specifically in Miami-Dade County, and there are those inside the president's orbit who are really crediting the work being done with specifically Latino voters. This is an area that the president has been talking about publicly for weeks now. It's a place in his campaign. In almost every discussion that I've had with campaign advisors, we'll talk about how they are trying to boost turnout specifically among Latino and Latina voters because of Florida here, for example. There's this ad that has come out now in the past couple of weeks that the president and his team continue to refer to. They think it's resonating inside the Latino community. And then there is what Andrea was referencing too, the idea that the attacks on Joe Biden as potentially a socialist in the eyes of the Trump campaign as they're going after the former vice president has been effective. This is a message that for all of the perhaps lack of message discipline that President Trump himself may have had over the last 10 months or so, the campaign itself has been very focused on that particular attack line. We saw it at the convention here at the White House not 2 months ago, and we've seen it on the campaign trail consistently at the president's rallies. Lester?
All right, Hallie Jackson, thanks.
All right, let's go to Chuck. You're still looking at Florida. Volusia County, that's a big one.
Well, I did the West Coast, so I thought I'd do some of the Atlantic Coast here. Volusia is Daytona. And look, Volusia used to be, if you remembered Florida back in 2000, Volusia was a blue county at one time. It's been a swing county shifting red. And again, another evidence, Joe Biden, 2 points better than Clinton again, and you just keep going down on these Gold Coast counties. And again, I emphasize this Biden number is improving. What it tells me when the Trump number doesn't move, it's the third party vote. And remember, we've talked about that. One of the bigger differences between 16 and 20 is no Gary Johnson. You know, you look here, Gary Johnson got 3% in this county and in Brevard. Where's that 3% all going? It looks like it's almost all going to Biden. Just think about that tonight when you think about the other states. If we're seeing a similar pattern here of third-party vote, suddenly basically lumping into what the old Clinton number was, and that's your new Biden number? And as you see here, sorry, no, the 3. I saw you squint.
No, I'm squinting at Trump in 2016, though. It says 181,000 votes, but he's got 195, so his number got better, too.
His number got better, but again, Biden's number is getting better faster.
All right. Chuck, thanks. We're going to take a break. Be back with more election night coverage in just a moment.
Checking my Twitter. I can't check my Facebook because stupid idiots banned me on there.
I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all. Washington feels more chaotic than ever. It's my job to ask the tough questions, left and right, and help you make sense of it all.
You ready to go to work? I'm so ready to go to work.
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
For breaking news in our changing world,
She's going to talk about Kamala, try to
President Trump and Joe
describe her
Biden
life.
at the
Are they going to talk about her having sex
the battleground blitz
with
as
a
we
married
enter
man?
the final stretch of the 2020 race.
From every angle.
If you were sitting here talking to Joe Biden and President Trump, what would you want to tell him right now?
On the ground.
The winds fanning these flames are expected to last another 24 hours.
And in depth.
We now have 2 vaccine trials on hold. Should people be concerned?
NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time. If now is the time the protesters finally win.
The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Weeknights at 10 on MSNBC.
They showed it during after her debate that she had over 1,400 convictions of black Americans, more than 5 times more than any other race in her job. I'm seeing quite a bit,
As you
mostly
can see,
of
we are less
Biden.
than 5 minutes away from a whole host of poll closings in the East. 16 states plus D.C., including some of the big ones. Florida will also get Pennsylvania's poll closing. But Florida has already dumped a lot of vote tonight. We've already seen a lot of the results, but what we know is it's tight. Go figure, Florida.
And one of the important Sunbelt states that Chuck and others have been talking about that are going to be really key to Biden's path.
Florida's going to Florida.
Yeah.
Florida's going to Florida.
All right, we want to give you a quick update of your local races now. We'll be right back, top of the hour, with those all-important 8 o'clock poll closings. You're watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Checking my Twitter.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced in Congress, I've begun to wonder if now is the time.
Gets me,
If now
Biden
is the time
chose
the
Kamala to be
protesters
his running mate.
finally
Yeah, when
win.
they were going against each other for the Democrat
The Last Word
nomination,
with Lawrence O'Donnell.
she kept calling
Weeknights at
Biden
10
a
on
racist and
MSNBC.
everything. ready to go to work? I don't know how much money was she paid
She's Joe Biden's choice to be next in line. But who is Kamala Harris? Join me, Joy Reid, as I explore her life's journey from Oakland to Washington on my 6-part podcast, Kamala, Next in Line. New episodes every Monday. Subscribe for free wherever you get your podcasts.
A real close-knit group of nurses.
What else we got? Because I'm tired of hearing those stupid commercials.
Nancy Pelosi is speaker because of the suburban revolt against Donald Trump. The question is, does it continue from 2018?
Introducing the MSNBC Daily, featuring written perspectives by experts you know and trust.
Let's check the other one.
If you're not doing as well as you want Miami-Dade,
there's still no sound on here. Trump got West Virginia, from what they say, but still, the election's not over.
It's a big victory for Donald Trump to turn this county. Democrats got swamped in election day turnout.
Of course she's going to decide what the Democrats always do.
49.6 to 49.0. The question, that's a little bit of math. 3,000 votes. You take everything you can in a state like this, you get the votes. So then you come up here, and now we're waiting, right? The Panhandle. This is a later time zone. We're waiting for votes out there. If you come through here, just want to show you.
Let's check the other
How about a third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon? GMA 3, what you need to know. It's all about you. Lunchtime at 1 Eastern, 12 Central and Pacific on ABC. This is going to be so good. Wednesday night, get ready for
a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before.
Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families.
Living large.
But
holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
Where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con.
All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
Good Morning America tomorrow morning. Wake up to real-time answers, real-time results. The morning after this historic election with the most powerful team in politics live. First thing in the morning, ABC. Good Morning America.
Cross my office off the list. What if we picture each other?
Please stop.
Joe Biden will win the state of Massachusetts. He'll win 11 electoral votes. CNN projects Joe Biden will win the state.
This is an ABC News special. There has never been an election
already predicting multiple states with Joe Biden, and the votes aren't even in. Ridiculous.
And we are going to keep on winning.
Of course he's gonna side with Biden. Biden's a racist.
And yes, we choose truth over lies. So it's time to stand up, take back our democracy.
Live from New York City and across the country, Election Night 2020. Now reporting, Chief Anchor George Stephanopoulos.
8 p.m. in the East, polls have just closed in 16 more states, and we have more results. In the state of New Jersey, Joe Biden will win the state of New Jersey. Chris Christie, I guess that's not a surprise.
I'm going to fall off my shit. I can't believe it. Are you going to tell me Cory Booker won next? I'm really going to pass.
We will check that. Another projection also.
They're already projecting him winners of multiple states. Bullshit,
Joe Biden will win the state
votes have not been all tabulated yet.
Electoral votes, a pickup for Donald Trump in the state of Oklahoma. Of course, he won that last time around. 7 electoral votes at play, and Donald Trump will win those. Joe Biden will win his home state of Delaware, and it's 3 electoral votes. Joe Biden will win the District of Columbia and its 3 electoral votes. But let's take a look down in the map now and see.
District of Columbia is not a state. They shouldn't have.
President Trump, Vermont, and those states up in the Northeast, Massachusetts, Maryland, Delaware, 4 and
electoral
New Jersey,
votes at all.
Joe Biden right now.
Washington, D.C. is not a state. They don't give Puerto Rico electoral votes, yet their votes count towards the election. All the other territories the U.S. has.
Joe Biden has a lead.
Yeah, and actually there's some good news for Joe Biden out of Ohio. The Biden campaign didn't really contest Ohio, and they made some last-minute trips there, and here's why they have reasons to be happy. In counties like Wood that went for Barack Obama, then switched over to President Trump, you can see Joe Biden is on top, 55% of the vote in, but you can see he's overperforming from Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. Another one of those counties that President Trump was able to swing, Trumbull County, you can see Joe Biden again on top. He's up almost 10 points there as well. But, you know, Ohio's all about the 3 C's, and George, I know you know this. Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati. We don't have information for Cincinnati yet, but in Columbus, And in Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, Joe Biden is doing really well. They're 74%. He's up almost 10 points from where Hillary Clinton was. These are the areas where Democrats have to really run up the vote. Lake County, which is always a nail-biter, 51 to 47 there. His numbers are really good compared to Hillary Clinton 4 years ago.
Okay, Tom, thanks. What are we seeing in the exit polls there, David?
Yeah, it's really different. Tom points out some encouraging numbers, but the exit polls reflect something slightly different in Ohio. If you take a look at the president's job performance in Ohio, 54% approve, 44% disapprove. This is the strongest number we're seeing in that sort of upper Midwest of the country. And when you break it down to those two central issues, containing COVID, rebuilding the economy, 48% say the pandemic is more important to try to contain. But here's where it gets interesting, George. I was digging a little deeper.
A lot of this vote in Texas is early voting, which we anticipate would be.
Yeah, it's early vote. Yeah, a lot of the blue you're seeing is because we're early. I mean, this is again a lot of early.
Fox is still not
you don't expect that to hold
showing anything.
This is very competitive. We know Democrats voted this.
Nothing there.
Safety concerns. They were encouraged by Democrats early on. So we're looking at a map right now. We talked about this earlier. We're going to be talking about this all night long. Some states are reporting in a different way this year because of all the mail-in.
The question is whether all of this little improvements for Joe Biden, whether it's a point here or 2 points there or 3 points there in these various counties, can that make up for 10 points in Miami? It's Miami versus the margins.
Is this at all a bellwether to what we'll see in the other Sun Belts?
No, I don't, because this is a unique, this was a unique Miami issue. Miami is Miami. You know, Miami is, some would say, is Hong Kong, right? The rest of Florida is sort of, is kind of connected. Miami's its own thing. It's its own entity. I would say this, if this is the way Biden loses Florida, he probably can feel better about what's happening up north, because many of these other counties perform more like these Midwestern states, right? You know, I always joke, Florida, you know, basically the Midwest is down here. You've got the Northeast retirees are down in the Atlantic coast. So the piece of the entire battleground shows up in Florida. So if you're looking for a silver lining on the Biden side of the aisle, you can say, well, all of this other stuff makes you think you should do well in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan, for what it's worth.
Let's bring in Casey into this conversation, because Casey, one of the criticisms of the Biden campaign, and some of it was loud down in Florida from Biden supporters, was that he was not doing enough to get out the Latino vote in South Florida. We mentioned the Venezuelan Americans, the Cuban Americans, and it seems like that is coming to pass in Miami-Dade.
Savannah, that's absolutely true, and there were Democrats who were trying to sound the alarm on this. And remember, this socialism-related message, it's something that President Trump has literally been pushing for almost the entirety of his administration. I've sat through State of the Union addresses where he uses this term. I mean, this is something that he really focused on very much. And I think that not only was the goal here to try and do what we're seeing play out, apparently, which was, win over more of those voters, but, cynics would say, and some Democrats will say, that it was also potentially a strategy of trying to convince these voters not to show up to the polls at all, to become demoralized about this, because this message was potentially attached to the Democrat Joe Biden. Of course, Biden's team focused much more, frankly, on the rebuild the blue wall strategy, and that's, of course, a set of states we've hardly turned to yet tonight: Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, where our conversation will inevitably turn later. But it's possible that they're paying the price for the decision in Miami-Dade County.
All right, we want to bring into the conversation now former Democratic Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill and conservative columnist and editor of National Review, Rich Lowry. Both are NBC News political contributors. Claire, let me start with you in this idea. I think Andrea brought up this notion that Biden had been painted with a socialist brush very early on, and it was hard to get rid of. Do you buy into that?
I think it may resonate more in some of the communities in Miami-Dade and in Florida, namely those Cuban Americans. But if you look at the gauntlet that Trump has to run, he may get by Florida, but he's got big ones ahead of him yet. He's got to get through North Carolina. He's got to get through Georgia. He's got to get through the really tough one, which is Pennsylvania, before he can think about getting reelected. So it's going to be a long night. It looks like Florida is not going to be decisive one way or the other for a while. But, you know, everybody was hoping it would be over early by winning Florida big. You can take a deep breath, grab a bottle of water, and hang in there. It's going to be a while.
All right, let me turn to Rich
going
Lowry.
to
Rich,
bathroom in the
like
boxes.
me, I know you hang on every word that Chuck Todd says. And were you watching when he started looking at some of those red counties in Florida where Biden seems to be overperforming Hillary Clinton? We know that obviously Trump has done well enough in Miami-Dade. Do you see any warning signals in those red counties in Florida that may portend in other states around the country?
We'll see. I mean, it seems clear one of the storylines of the night will be this shifting within the Republican coalition we saw in 2016, where Trump was shedding support in more traditional Republican affluent suburbs and then picking up support in working class areas, some of which were more traditionally Democrat. So it seems like he's going to lose more of the affluent suburbs. Can he make it up with more of his, turning out even more of his voters this time around? But Florida, if he pulls Florida out, and Claire's right, this is necessary for Trump. It's not for Biden. Trump has to have this. You can come up with theoretical scenarios where he wins without Florida, but it's very likely not going to happen. But it'll be a story of an incredibly robust state operation in Florida that focused on the Latino vote like a laser beam, and with the idea that they could actually win over Latinos, especially Latino men, and make a difference in a really close election. And it seems as though that theory might be proving out tonight down there.
You know, they had an aggressive turnout operation that the Trump campaign did as well, and turned out new voters of its own. We're watching as these results come in. Florida polls just closed a few moments ago. Kerry Sanders is in St. Petersburg, Florida, Pinellas County, which is a real crossroads county.
I remember back in 2016 when the election was going on, I watched the entire thing because I was in Kentucky being a truck driver. Hey, Brisk.
40 years, really,
I remember watching it in 2016, and Trump was way ahead and everything. Then all of a sudden, California came in and they gave it to Hillary before 20%, only 20% of the vote.
Just because somebody's registered in a party doesn't
they
mean
try to
necessarily
say
voted
she
in that party.
took the lead then, when she never took the lead the entire night.
Right now, it's a 79% turnout of voters here, which is really quite dramatic. We can see that the Democrats have voted with 207,000 plus, the Republicans 213,000. So there was a greater Republican turnout here, especially in a county where it's basically even between Republicans and Democrats. Now look at that yellow line.
Oh, take
This
off
is
your
really the most
mask. You
important
don't
one that
need
we're
it when
looking
you're
at.
talking on a camera.
133,000 plus voters with no party affiliation. Those are likely the ones who are
you
going to make the
gonna
decision, not only here in
contaminate?
Pinellas County, but across the state. 27% of Florida voters
Camera
have
guy?
no party affiliation. And drilling down, as the campaigns have done, is they were trying to woo those voters 65 and plus in age, those non-party affiliated voters. Those are the ones in 2016 who significantly lent and went towards Trump, giving him the election. And the belief is that that is the same group that will have an impact again in Florida with this election for president. One of the things to note that you all have been talking about with Miami-Dade and the Cuban American population, just consider for a moment as we look at this, we have 930,000 Cuban Americans of voting age, primarily in South Florida, but up along the I-4 corridor, sort of Orange County, Osceola, we're talking about in the Orlando area, we have 875,000 Puerto Ricans. They tend to be Democrats. We have the Republicans who are the Cuban Americans who are primarily Republicans. So as the night progresses, it will be interesting to see whether that Puerto Rican vote winds up in some way canceling out some of that Cuban American vote. All eyes on Florida, though, as you guys have been saying here.
Yeah, Kerry, I'm sitting here looking, 87% in statewide already there.
Well, look, I mean, look, here's the thing. We have 1.5 million votes remaining, but I'll be honest, as Kerry was talking, Trump's lead went from 0.6%, and I've just been watching it go. As you can see here, it's now jumped to more than a percentage point. And again, this is because all of this red is coming in. And I'll tell you, the more I look at this, the more it doesn't, things are not getting, things are getting better for Donald Trump. Let me just take you to one county that was a Trump-Obama county that we cared about a lot here, and it was St. Lucie County. This is St. Lucie, I believe, is Vero Beach, right around there, up the Gold Coast. This is the county that Obama carried. So when you win Florida, Obama carried it. Trump narrowly carried it, and he won Florida, as you can see here. Trump's holding his number on this one. Biden's improved. It's another one of these 2-point improvements. But the question is, it's not looking to me as if the numbers
and they're not even showing the other candidates' numbers
to make up for. And the big one, we're gonna
running.
Look at this and we'll see what the margin is.
They're
right
giving
now.
it all to
you look at
Biden.
117,000.
Stop it.
I could probably find the vote right here in Miami-Dade. If you just look 2 years ago, she won Miami-Dade by almost 300,000 votes. Right now, Biden's only winning Miami-Dade by 28 and 60, 88,000 votes. All right, think about that. 300,000, 88,000. So he's got, and she lost the state. So he's got to find more than 220. He's got to find some 300,000 extra votes in all these margins, if not 500,000 extra votes. I'm just saying, Florida looks like an uphill climb for Joe Biden.
Let's not forget Barack Obama spent a lot of time in Florida here in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, he did. I think a lot of questions are going to be asked, though, to go back to did they hear the calls of Miami-Dade enough? Look, the Biden campaign will get criticized if they're not carrying Georgia or North Carolina. The criticism about their Florida strategy will either amp up or down depending on how well they do in neighboring Georgia and up the coast in North Carolina.
All right, and we just projected Tennessee going to the president. No surprise there. Donald Trump, the winner of the 11 electoral votes there.
Kristen Welker, let's bring you into this Florida conversation. If we go back to the beginning of the evening and Chuck and his path to victory, it didn't seem to loom as large or as important to Joe Biden. Had they already kind of figured they had other paths around Florida?
They absolutely have, Lester, and I think that's really the key. Look, I just heard from a Democrat in Florida who's very close to the Biden campaign who acknowledges that this is really an uphill battle at this point, watching these numbers come in. But I've also heard from Biden campaign officials who say they still feel good about the night because they have several paths that do not include Florida, that do rely on Midwestern states. That blue wall that Hillary Clinton was not able to hold back in 2016, that vice president campaigned so aggressively in Michigan, Wisconsin. So those are the states that they're really turning to and focused on. And they say they feel good about. They feel good about the turnout, in the suburban areas that they will need in order to carry that state. And so that's really where their focus has shifted at this point. And look, I've been talking to the Biden campaign and top Democrats about Florida for quite some time. He visited 4 times. So he did make a real push for the state. They, of course, want to win Florida, but again, they have multiple other paths that do not include it, that in addition to those Midwestern states that I just mentioned would include North Carolina and Georgia, and so that is where their focus is going to be at this hour.
Kristen Welker, thank you. We're back after a short break with more election results. Stay with us.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Good morning. Welcome to Today. We're glad to have you with us.
This fall, we're right there with you, whether you're back to school.
What do you guys think? We're excited?
Or back to work. We're keeping you safe.
I love being back.
Every morning on Today.
Police murder of unarmed black men has been an American way of death across centuries. After seeing the most comprehensive police reform bill ever introduced,
Again, I'm not quite sure I know the answer, but at some point
protesters finally
serious questions
check on the other ones.
thinking through what's going to happen and how we present it, because our predictions affect outcomes to some extent, and they also, of course,
There's our sound on that one.
based on our predictions. And so something really went wrong in the way we predicted a number of these races. And let me just restate something really quick. Florida is the future of the country, not simply because it's multi-ethnic, which obviously it is, but because that's where people are moving. Yeah. Florida and Texas are 2 of the states that have the biggest inflow from other states
Just give it to me straight.
in huge
Nothing
numbers.
there.
And so it does tell you something about where we're going. And I think if you're a Republican or a Trump voter, it tells you something more hopeful than you expected.
Yeah. I think you're right, and the key is that Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and we're starting to get more and more of that vote in. Florida, the Trump people feel confident about.
Now the big question, who's going to win? We'll do the lawsuits and the mail problems later, preparing for unrest and visit the battlegrounds.
Idaho.
What do the numbers tell us? Steve Kornacki, new polls from NBC News and CNBC. 97 million Americans have already voted. Walk us through the map right now.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Shep, because there's a difference nationally. The poll averages high single digits. Our NBC Wall Street Journal poll has Biden ahead by 10. But check out swing state numbers from the new CNBC Change polling. Take these in two different groups. First of all, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. Remember, Trump barely won all three of these in 2016. They've got a 7-point lead in the new poll for Biden in Michigan, 8 in Wisconsin, and then 5, a little bit closer in Pennsylvania. So it is no accident the Trump campaign has been spending so much time and money in Pennsylvania lately, because they have to win at least one of these 3 states, and they clearly see Pennsylvania as their ripest target here. Again, the poll finding Biden ahead by 5. Trump must win Pennsylvania tomorrow to have a chance in the Electoral College. He has to do more than that as well, though. Next tier is swing states. Really, these are all must win for Trump as well. Arizona, North Carolina, Florida. But look, closer. Only 3 points is the Biden lead in Arizona, 2 in North Carolina, 3 in Florida. So from Trump's standpoint, you know, he's up against
See, here they're trying to say that Biden's leading all these states.
He's not that far off in the next level of swing states. You got to win them all. No margin for error here. But when you look at the swing state polls, it's narrow, but you do see a path that still exists, barely, for the president.
Steve, what does the data tell us about why people are voting the way they are? We have some new numbers from our CNBC Change research poll.
This is really interesting, too. What is motivating voters here? On this question of Trump voters, is your vote more for Trump overwhelmingly? They say that's what's getting them out there. They want to vote for the president. Some small number there say against Biden. Now, here's where it gets interesting. On the other side, Biden voters, more of them say their vote. A majority of Biden voters say they're not really voting for Biden as much as they're voting against Trump. And again, 46% say they're voting for Biden. So really, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, this is an election about Donald Trump. And then you could also ask this, what's the most important reason for voting? Sort of an open-ended question here, but the number one answer that came back from Biden voters on this is to get rid of Trump. 2/3 said getting Trump out of office is what's motivating them. What about Trump voters then? What is the number one?
And again, I do think that the BLM message is clearly very appealing to a lot of white suburban voters. It's clearly very unappealing to a lot of non-white voters. Who expected that?
Yeah, we've got a call real quick. Stand by, Tucker. President Trump will win the state of Indiana, home state.
Harris County and in most of Texas, but they are still open out to our west in El Paso. So, of course, few people know that Texas actually straddles 2 different time zones, and the votes are still being cast out there in El Paso. But we anticipate that in the next few moments, we will see the activity here at the Harris County vote headquarters pick up quite a bit. This is where those poll workers will be bringing in the various ballots from the polling locations, nearly 800 of them in Harris County alone, and they will be counting them here tonight, George. And so far, things have gone smoothly here. Only a couple of polling stations opened late because of technical difficulties, and so that has been good news. Also, the weather was perfect here, and both sides of this campaign, the Republicans and Democrats, encouraged by that, and certainly, clearly, when we talk about the voter turnout, it has been massive here in Texas, and it is the reason why Democrats feel like they can turn this historically red state blue. And of course, time will tell if that happens, George.
Marcus Moore, thanks very much. Matt Dowd, you're there in Austin. Texas has been changing. The question is how fast?
Well, it has been changing. It was a state that Mitt Romney won by 16, and Donald Trump won by 9, and then Beto O'Rourke finished 2.5% behind Ted Cruz. And so it's been changing slowly. Donald Trump has speeded that up somewhat. But I think one of the key signs is this is going to be a very close race. I mean, usually, George, when we're here, we've already called Texas and we're moving on. A Democrat hasn't carried Texas as president since 1976. Denton County, which Tom mentioned, I'll just say, and I looked at the data, Denton County is 98% in. That's a county that Hillary Clinton lost by 20 points. It's a suburban county that has been traditionally solid Republican. Donald Trump is only 7 points ahead in that county with 98% of the vote in. That shows what's happening in the suburban areas.
Okay, Matt Dowd, thanks very much. We can project another state for Donald Trump right now, West Virginia. West Virginia and its 5 electoral votes will go to Donald Trump. Only 10% of the expected vote in it, but that is a clear win tonight for Donald Trump. So let's take another look at the board.
This is what I don't
Right
get.
now you see
10% vote is in, already
Donald Trump has
declaring
42. We have
who won.
long way to go on this election night 2020. We'll be right back.
Right now, we don't know who's winning because they're already declaring a bunch of states for the different candidates, yet 5 to 20% are even in votes are in, so who knows? We probably won't know exactly till tomorrow.
The Mandalorian, new season now streaming only on Disney+.
Wednesday night, get ready for a con so big,
Thank you, One Whiskey, for following. I appreciate it.
like it before. Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families. Living large, but
Holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con. All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
Good Morning America tomorrow morning. Wake up to real-time answers, real-time results. The morning after this historic election with the most powerful team in politics live. First thing in the morning, ABC. Good Morning America. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Moore.
We have made it through another week together.
America's most watched program across all of television. ABC News honored winner for the second straight year with the Edward R. Murrow Award for overall excellence in television. More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1.
It's kind of funny how they're already trying to project Florida for Trump when last election they waited till almost midnight before they projected Florida. They're saying Biden already won 6 states. Washington, D.C. is not a state. Just tweeted that President Trump is up 60% in Virginia, but the media is already claiming it's races for Joe Biden. See, that's what's bullshit. Biden couldn't beat Obama. Biden couldn't beat Hillary. Biden couldn't beat Clinton. Biden couldn't beat George when he ran. What makes it think he's going to beat Trump? We already know if he got in, he ain't going to remain in office. He's going to turn it over to Kamala. Music. I want to hear.
And Democratic donors are put the kibosh on that.
the actual talk.
Like Bloomberg, who just by the way spent $100 million in Florida, $5 for every person in the state of Florida.
Actually, I think that we're going to connect to them in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a really quick break and then come back and let you know what's happening in Arizona, because their polls close, I believe, in about 34 minutes.
The Biden of 1985 is the Biden we're looking at today.
Tucker, as always, thank you.
Thank you.
Polls are opening in just a few minutes.
Keep it here.
Quick break. We'll be right back.
Check out this one.
People were tired of living together. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but John Hickenlooper could easily win that race. Easily. Georgia. Raphael Warnock versus Kelly Loeffler. I believe her name's Loeffler, maybe Loeffler. I don't know. I went to community college. Georgia's interesting. Now, normally you and I would think, Georgia, it's the South. Georgia has gotten closer and closer and closer over time, meaning it's Atlanta's fault. In general, when something bad is happening in Georgia, you can blame Atlanta. And I'm...
All right, nothing good there. Let's go to this one. Nothing there.
When the time is right for you, our great place.
More than 85 million ballots have already been cast across the country. There's still 3 days to go until this election, but some states count early, others wait until Election Day to do their tally. So a lot of folks are wondering, when will we know who the winner is? For that, we turn to NBC's national political correspondent, Steve Kornacki. This morning, Steve, we always appreciate your expertise, especially with 72 hours to go. We think you should be resting up already, but we'll take your time here. We need your help with the viewer's guide. What should folks be watching for this Tuesday night? What's the first place you'll be looking when the polls begin?
This ain't live, this is old.
Let's fire up our schedule of
Thought this
polls.
was current.
We all see it. Here's Blair. Okay. Blue progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto when you bundle with us. You don't know. So who climbs ladders to clean their gutters?
Dad, I keep telling you it's dangerous.
Climbing ladders is too dangerous. Leaf Filter puts an end to that. So how does it work? Leaf Filter's three-piece system filters out leaves and debris, letting water flow through freely.
Do we need to replace our gutters?
Great question. Leaf Filter can be installed right on top of your existing gutters. We're sold. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or go to getleaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate.
This is Joe. He used to have bad breath. Now he uses a capsule of TheraBreath Fresh Breath Oral Rinse to keep his
They
breath
haven't
strong
shown it,
all day long.
done anything there yet. So.
TheraBreath. It's a better mouthwash at Walmart, Target, and other stores.
We are Empowered Retirement, and we are giving over 9.7 million people the guidance they need to help them pursue the future they imagine, making it easier for them to take action so they can focus on today while saving for tomorrow.
It is now 8:30 p.m. on the East Coast and 7:30 p.m. in Arkansas, the only state where polls close at this point in the evening. Fox News Decision Desk can now project that President Trump will easily defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of Arkansas. Also,
Let's see, nothing there.
in North Carolina, a must-win state for the president.
News can project that President Trump is likely to win Arkansas in the race to 270 electoral votes. President Trump has 37. Joe Biden has 20. I was telling you about all those interesting things we want to tell you about. Well, Elections Director Anthony Salvanto is at the Election Data Center.
Trump is up
and
37
Anthony,
to
let's
20.
dig into Georgia because some really interesting developments there.
Right. Not a lot of vote counted in Georgia yet. You see the map here, the counties in red going towards the president, the counties in blue going towards Joe Biden. But what I'm going to show you folks is the overlay of what our CBS News models have for this state at the moment when we combine the exit poll interviews that we've been doing for the last few weeks with the early vote as well as today.
Hey Scarlett, how
So
you
turn
doing?
that
How
on,
you
and the
said?
estimate
How's it
leads
going?
towards Joe Biden. And that's how we look at things here at the decision desk. That's what makes this race a toss-up. When the trends keep going the way they are, it might go towards Biden, but the counted vote right now for Donald Trump. Now, the other thing I want to show you is I'm going to zoom in here on Metro Atlanta, which is one part that we're going to focus on all night. Cobb County.
Glad you're here too.
63% for Biden. I'm going to show you the history of that Hillary Clinton only got 48%. Look at that. Joe Biden besting those numbers. I'm going to show you Fulton County, where the Democrats will need to win by a big margin. Not much of it in yet, but 78% for Joe Biden, 10 points better than Hillary Clinton did. So he is on a trend line to outperform Hillary Clinton. Will it be enough to hold up?
Who cares about Hillary Clinton? She lost.
That we are a long way
Stop talking about
from
Hillary.
seeing,
We don't
because
care.
I will show you, Nora, only 22% of the vote.
Okay, Anthony, stand by just a second. I know John wants to make a point about Georgia.
Well, Cobb, Anthony, first of all, to your point, this was a county that George W. Bush won by more than 20 points, and it's the perfect illustration of that changing landscape of a state of Georgia. It used to be a ruby red county, now it's blue, but there's 31% of the vote in Cobb. And is that because we're at a difference here between early vote and day of vote?
Yes. It is, because what the story all night as these votes come in is going to be trying to parse which is which. At this moment, we are not sure. And so what's going to happen is the Republicans, we believe, have done well. Donald Trump has done better on that election day vote, but it's that early vote, John, where Joe Biden, we think, has run up the score.
That's a very important point that's being made, because it could still change without the night as more of the votes come in. Let me ask you, Anthony, about the state of Ohio. That has closed. A very important, no Republican has won the presidency without the state of Ohio.
Indeed. So let's zoom in there. Now here we do have votes starting to come in, 42% of it, in fact. Key things to watch in Ohio. First of all, Cleveland metro area, up in here, okay? At the moment, let's zoom in for a second on Cuyahoga. Here's another place where Democrats have to do well. Right now, Joe Biden at 74.8. I'm going to show you the past history, 66% for Clinton. So if you're Joe Biden, you're liking that percentage. That's where you start. But then we're going to look at the counties around Cleveland, whether it be Summit County. How's he doing there? Better than Hillary Clinton. Portage, well, nothing in there yet, so we'll keep watching as well. So one of the things I want to watch tonight, Metro Cleveland, can Joe Biden outperform Hillary Clinton? That'll tell you whether or not he's got a shot in Ohio.
What is so fascinating is all you have to do is follow the candidate's schedule, because Joe Biden made a surprise visit to that very place just yesterday after spending so little time in the state of Ohio. His folks must have known what was going on and said, let's send him there.
What he knew was that Sherrod Brown, the senator, who had thought about running for president himself, who has been very concerned about winning back his state, called Biden and said, come to Cleveland. And it may end up working today. They even sent Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, today to Columbus, thinking that they could potentially drive up the vote there.
It's also interesting, too, to note that Mike Bloomberg added last-minute money to Ohio. You know, he gave the $100 million. After he dropped out of the race, he said, I will do whatever I can to support whoever the Democratic nominee is. It was Joe Biden. He's given $100 million in Florida. That money's been well spent. At the very last minute, he added money to Ohio, too. Would that have made a difference in advertising?
What I think is also interesting here in Ohio is you look at that breakdown, and Trump is still doing very well among white voters without a college degree. This is interesting because one of the unique attributes Joe Biden sold for himself was that he could relate to working class America and bring them back to the Democratic Party. For those who voted for Barack Obama, tried out Trump, that he could bring them back to Democrats. So we'll have to see where the night takes us. But to see in Ohio, he's still, President Trump is still doing very well among white voters without that degree, that education gap.
Which is actually a very large share of the electorate. People would be surprised to know it was in 2016. Right. We'll be looking at, we're going to go inside the numbers in Ohio about why people voted the way they did. That's why we turned to Major Garrett. He's got the info.
That's right, Nora. And for Ohio, at all exit polls, what I like to say is, yes, it's numbers, it's percentages, but it's really the story of the election. It's a story that you tell state by state. So I'm going to start slow. You might think it's a little on the boring side, but I guarantee, stick with me, I'll have a grabber for you at the end. All right, let's look at the composition of the Ohio vote. 2016 Clinton voters, how did they break? Okay, 94 Biden, 5 for Trump. How did the Trump voters from 2016 go this time? 94-6. You're all saying boring. Come on, Major, where's the grabber? I'm showing it to you now. These are voters who showed up this time who did not vote in 2016. They're breaking 64-34 for Joe Biden, and they are making up 13% of the electorate in Ohio. I've got another little nugget for you. White college women, Donald Trump in Ohio won them by 17 points. In 2020, according to the exit poll data, Joe Biden is winning them by 20. That is a 37-point switch.
Whoa. Whoa.
I told you there.
Say that again.
I told you.
Say that, explain that, because that just seems like a huge data point at this hour. Say it again.
So, white college women in Ohio, making up 16% of the 2020 electorate, are breaking for Joe Biden 60-40. This demographic went for Donald Trump in 2016 by 17 points, 56-39. So that is a shift in Ohio that could be very important as this night unfolds.
Okay, do we know why? This is one thing we always said, okay, we're going to see certain different people vote different ways. Why is there that shift away from Trump?
Probably because there is an emphasis in the minds of these voters on coronavirus as opposed to rebuilding the economy. There is this dichotomy, choose one or the other. Of course, some voters say, I can choose both, but I want to prioritize one over another.
Was it?
We'll dig more deeply into
it. Did it have anything to do with
I hope
President
Trump
Trump's
wins by a
rhetoric?
landslide.
The bullying of
We
people.
were looking
the
earlier,
comments
they
about
had
Fauci.
Biden
That was
up
part of his
with
closing
91
argument. The president chose to make that.
electoral
So
votes.
I can't give you specific numbers
And
on
now
Ohio
he's
for this
down to
demographic
20,
group, but I
which
can tell you
means
in conversations
fucking
with
all the
Republicans
states
and
that
Democrats
were
about focus
supposedly
groups in the
declaring
latter parts of this campaign, one
it
thing
has
emerged they've never
changed.
seen before. Voters saying, I agree with the president's policies, I have benefited from them, but there are parts of his personality I just can't take. And elevating character and persona over policy, which is something that pollsters have told me in focus groups they've never seen in the way they saw in this election cycle.
Yeah, and remember, Biden was talking about these issues before the pandemic began, before that really caused people to really think about his leadership skills.
We've got some news coming up in just a second about the independent vote as well nationally, which is really striking. But we've also got some breaking news right now, so we want to check in with CBS's Mark Strassman. He is in Georgia, where they're having a big problem counting some of the votes. Mark?
Nora, this is an election return watch party here on the edge of Atlanta. These are mostly excited Democrats because when's the last time Georgia thought of itself as a battleground state? After a record early returns and essentially a day of problem-free voting, there is now a hitch in the tabulation of votes. I'm standing in Fulton County. Fulton County includes a chunk of Atlanta. Downtown Atlanta is State Farm Arena, where the Atlanta Hawks play. They are tabulating the absentee ballots of Fulton County, Georgia's most populous county. A water pipe has broken inside the arena. They had counted 86,000 absentee ballots. We don't know how many more they have yet to tabulate, but all the tabulation of those ballots has now stopped. We're told by election officials they may not finish tabulating those votes for a day or two. So depending how close the rest of the state is, we may not know the result of this critical battleground state for another day or two. That is because, again, a water pipe has broken in State Farm Arena. State Farm Arena is where they were counting the absentee ballots of Georgia's most populous county, and now that tabulation has stopped. Big
It's kind of funny how suddenly a pipe burst.
How many ballots
Don't
we're
burst at
talking
all
about?
until
What that
election time
means?
as they're
We
counting
don't
the
know.
votes.
We've asked that question, Gail, and we haven't got an answer for that yet. We know that there were 86,000, but apparently it's a very labor-intensive process, and what they are telling us is that it's going to take a day or two, which suggests to me that they have a lot to go.
Yeah. The irony is that across the country, so many of these major league sports teams open up their arenas to allow people to vote and to do exactly what Marcus said. Tabulate them in a big open space so they can be done quickly, but nobody accounted for the plumbing, I guess.
I was going to say, I'm no plumber, but maybe because it hasn't been used lately. It's not up and ready for the big turnout today.
And just to put this in perspective, Fulton County is a very, very Democratic county. Hillary Clinton won it by 40 points. So if there is a delay, it's going to be Joe Biden's votes that are sitting up in the air while they dry things out.
But John Dickerson, I love your knowledge of history. Have you ever heard of votes being delayed because a pipe burst?
No,
You wrote the book.
But I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's an intersection between plumbing and this.
I know, but it's so funny because here we were thinking about foreign interference. This was going to take down a vote, and now it's just
Voter intimidation.
That wasn't on the model of
it wasn't
interference,
and it's just
for
plain
the
old-
evening.
plain
And
old.
it'll complicate in some ways the way we can extrapolate from the data for the rest of the South. So that could have some impact on our figuring things out at the table.
Right, but we're going to keep everything in perspective. It is in one county. It's a big state, the state of Georgia. It is an important county, nevertheless.
Yeah, so far, county in the state.
I know, an important one. We're going to keep everything in perspective. All right, CBS News want to bring you a projection at this point because West Virginia goes to President Trump, a reliably Republican state. And coming up, how are the candidates feeling as the votes come in? We're going to check in with correspondents along with more poll closings, projections, and the state of this race overall. We'll do the what happens if board, as we call it, to see the pathways to the presidency. You're watching CBS News 2020, America Decides.
Of the votes. So these counties that are red will start to fill in, and indeed they are. Florida, you've got upwards of 9 million votes cast, and just for comparison vote in the Panhandle. As it is right now, 83% of the votes in. President with a half-point lead now in the state of Florida. You've got upwards of 9 million votes cast, and just for a comparison vote, your advance vote.
Nationwide voter registration program in 13 states that allow online registration. Think about this. 2016, there were a total of, well, the Republicans were 340,000 below the Democrats. Today, they're about 130,000 below the Democrats. That's the smallest margin between Democratic and Republican registrations in like 30 some odd years. And Florida was a much smaller state with a much less of a population for that long ago. And you know, this has to be factored into it, and we may be seeing that tonight. The Sumter County, for example, where the villages are, has both grown in population and grown in importance as a result, and it's full of seniors. The Villages is a senior retirement community with about 10 different or 12 different sort of installations or components of it. And today, Trump has been winning that county with about 90% of the vote in by better than 2-to-1, significantly above where he was 4 years ago. I suspect that's in part a sign of what the movement into Florida has done and what the changing nature of the Florida electorate is like.
Hey, Carl, I want to ask one thing. Just interrupt you real quick. We talked about this earlier tonight, and I just want to bring it up now. In all of these states, you have absentee ballots requested, and then absentee ballots, according to the secretaries of state, that come back, that have been returned. In Florida, as of this afternoon, you had the requested at more than 6 million. Requested at more than 6 million. As of this afternoon, 4,649,000 of those ballots had been returned. We're trying to get an update for tonight. Is that an issue if the separation in some of these states fits below that number?
Yeah, well, yes, there are some people who just decide not to vote. The bigger number come from people like myself. I was planning to do a mail-in ballot, got my ballot at the house, and then decided, my wife went and voted at the early vote location in Texas, and she said, look, like a breeze, walk in, walk out. Well, I went there, I took my ballot, ran it through the shredder, went to the early voting location. If I'd shown up with it, it would have taken me maybe 10 minutes to do the whole thing. Surrender my blue ballot, sign one form, and then go. And instead, by not having it with me, I had to spend 20 minutes, and I'm a provisional ballot, but that's the way a lot of people handle it. They just get rid of the ballot or turn the ballot in and end up voting in person.
I don't know if an angel is landing or what's happening there, but somebody's getting
a wonderful life.
Yeah, it's a wonderful life. 4.737 cast so far, but some of these states, we should point out, extended the deadline for those ballots to come in, and there's different statewide rules, like Pennsylvania, where you don't have to have a postmark or a signature on the envelope. Okay, we're minutes away from getting our first look at Arizona and Michigan, Wisconsin, a host of other states. But first, a quick look at where the race stands now. President Trump has a total of 73 electoral votes in his column. Joe Biden has 91 so far tonight.
Let's check in with the campaign's Peter Doocy is at the Biden headquarters in Wilmington, Delaware. But we begin with John Roberts, who is at the White House. That's where President Trump is tonight, watching as these results come in.
Twitter.
John, what's the mood with the campaign tonight?
Other people I know are showing
that they're optimistic, but they are actually very optimistic here at the Trump campaign. And folks here at the White House as well, believing that the president is poised to win this. You heard Karl Rove a moment ago talking about the Villages and how it's going for President President Trump. I was at a campaign event, his last one at the Villages. It was a week ago Friday, last Friday. There were thousands of people there. The enthusiasm really was off the charts. But as importantly, President Trump really does seem to be performing much better with Hispanic voters in Florida this year than he did back in 2016. And when you talk about enthusiasm as well, he had an event in Opa-locka, Florida a couple of days ago. 12,000 people were there. So I was talking to somebody from the Trump campaign a short time ago. They believe that Florida is a lock for them. They're just waiting for the official call. More difficult is what's going on in Pennsylvania. They believe that they're going to do well there. I was in Scranton, the Scranton area yesterday. A lot of enthusiasm there. They might win it tonight, but then there's this concern about 3 days of counting ballots thereafter. Those ballots will be counted but segregated. Anything that comes in after 8 o'clock tonight that could be potentially the focus of a legal challenge, but that all depends on what happens tonight. If Joe Biden were to run away with it, clearly there wouldn't be a challenge, or if President Trump were to run away with it, there likely wouldn't be a legal challenge, so we'll still have to wait to see. Other than that, the campaign feeling good about Arizona, Texas, Georgia, North Carolina, Iowa, and Ohio. There's some thought that the president could flip Nevada, the idea being that casino workers and other service workers are concerned about more coronavirus lockdowns under a Biden presidency, and the fact that that might actually cause some of the casinos and hotels to go under. Might they come out for President Trump? And then there's Minnesota. They think they have a chance there. It hasn't gone red since 1972. Even Ronald Reagan, in his 49-state sweep in 1984, couldn't pick off Minnesota. But the Trump campaign, cautiously optimistic that they might be
Reagan
able to
didn't
do it
pick
tonight.
off
We'll wait and see.
Minnesota in
Basically, the president
84
says we're
because
looking good
his
all over the country. Time will
Democrat
tell.
was from Minnesota.
That's a cliche, but it's true tonight. Martha?
It's always proven
John, real
that
quick,
the state
Ohio, we've
that
got the board filled up
nominations
here,
from
and, that
most
vote,
likely
as we
will
said,
lose
early
those
vote going
states.
for Joe Biden in Ohio. There was confidence
The only
in the
reason
Trump
why
campaign
Trump
about the
didn't win
situation
New
on the
York
ground
in
Ohio.
2016 because Hillary
And of
was
course, early
from New
voting
York
tends
also.
to favor Democrats, but they believe as the numbers start to come in that things will turn around. They really do believe that Ohio is going to go into the win column for them. But this idea of if Florida is called, I mean, clearly it's not going to affect the vote because the vote's already been taken, but it certainly will be a big psychological boost for the Trump campaign.
I don't know how they're saying
Thank you. It's worth
Ohio's
pointing out
going
that
for
Florida started
Biden
voting
when
counting weeks ago.
most
So
everything I've
they
seen
may be
from
one of the
Ohio,
states
they
that in the
want Trump.
battleground category that has perhaps the most efficient process that we're going to see tonight. So we do expect that we're going to be able to make, some call on Florida tonight.
They were afraid
based
of
on that.
2000.
Yeah,
I remember
exactly.
Tallahassee.
They want to
well.
make sure they've got it, all those I's dotted and T's crossed. Our thanks to John. We'll go back to him later tonight. Peter Doocy is also with us. He's live where he has spent quite a bit of time over the past several months in Wilmington, Delaware, covering the Biden campaign. Peter, what are you hearing from their side tonight?
Well, right now, Martha, we're not hearing anything at the Biden HQ. It is very quiet, as you can see, because the 300 cars that have been queued up and swept nearby for a drive-in event tonight have not been let in. So it is kind of a surreal scene where we do expect to see Joe Biden if he has anything to say. We have heard from the Biden team that nothing has changed as of right now from the last time that they ran through their numbers with us this morning, when they were confident enough to say that they thought they had a path to victory even if they did not win in Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio, or Texas. So as of right now, the way that they see things, that still has not changed. They think that a lot of the, they're also telling us that a lot of what they think they're hearing from the Trump campaign is platitudes, and that if the Trump campaign really thinks that they have a pathway to 270, or at least as many pathways to 270, that they should show their work. As for Joe Biden, we understand that he is at home right now. He is somebody who is not big on Twitter. He has said many times over the course of the campaign that if he becomes the president, we don't have to worry about his tweets. He is somebody that gets a lot of his information over the phone. It's been reported that during the campaign, or rather during the pandemic in the campaign, he has spent as many as 7 hours on the phone with different lawmakers and with advisors. Some of those are standing calls. Some of them are just based on things that are breaking hour by hour. And also something that was interesting just in terms of what he might be doing as all this, as his whole world may be getting ready to change. The other day we were in Warm Springs, Georgia, after an an event, just staring at the motorcade, which we spend a lot of time doing when we're trying to shout a question. And we saw his granddaughter, Finnegan, get out of one car in the back and go up to the armored SUV where Biden was sitting and hand him a cell phone to show him something. And so we know that he is watching the returns with family. He usually doesn't have a lot of people around, but it is a family effort to make sure that the Democratic nominee is fully briefed on whatever is going on. Martha?
Peter, thank you very much.
More than a dozen states, including some of the most consequential of this 2020 election, set to close their polls in just a few minutes. We'll get our first look at those results just moments from now. Keep it here.
One day, we'll look back and remember the moment that things, for one strange time in our lives, got very quiet. We worried over loved ones, over money, over our planet, and over takeout. Let's remember this time when so many struggled to feel secure and build a future where everyone can. Because when the world seems like it's standing still, that's the perfect time for us to change it.
If you have risk factors like heart disease, diabetes, and raised triglycerides, Vascepa can give you something to celebrate. Vascepa, when added to your statin, is clinically proven to provide 25% lower risk from heart attack and stroke. Vascepa is clearly different. First and only FDA approved. Celebrate less risk, even for those with family history. Don't take Vascepa if you are or become allergic to icosapent ethyl or any inactive ingredient in Vascepa. Serious side effects may occur, like heart rhythm problems and bleeding. Heart rhythm problems may occur in more people with persistent cardiovascular risk or who have had them in the past. Tell your doctor if you experience an irregular heartbeat or other heart rhythm problems. Possible side effects include muscle and joint pain. Celebrate less risk. Added cardio protection. Talk to your doctor about adding protection with Vascepa.
911, what's your emergency? Help us on the way.
Hey, did you?
Yep, done.
And the?
Of course.
And?
Oh, yeah.
All in one?
Hour.
Behind the world's most productive people is the world's most comfortable chair, the incredible X-Chair, featuring patented dynamic variable lumbar support. X-Chair's adjustable seat depth keeps users small to tall, comfortable and supported. Available in breathable mesh, HDR foam, or top grain leather. Customize comfortable positions for your neck and arms. And X-Chair's patented SideFloat Infinite Recline provides the perfect recline for users of almost any size. This is not your grandfather's office chair. X-Chair supports workers everywhere who find themselves now.
Check other channels.
Plus, your zip code may have coverage, but the give back benefit that adds money back to your Social Security check every month.
All of a sudden, one political party is talking about putting people in charge to redistribute all the wealth and the Marxist utopia we're going to have. I can imagine that would motivate them to go to the polls.
Absolutely. I mean, Democrats are very lucky that Biden was the candidate, because as I was reiterating in February of this year, Biden is the only person who stood a chance against Trump. Simply because when you compared the Bernie versus Biden polling in Florida against Trump and head-to-head polling back in February, Biden was the only one who stood a chance. So it is remarkable that Biden is able to put Kamala Harris, who endorsed a Green New Deal that would effectively nationalize 40% of the American economy, on his ticket, and he still has a fighting chance. Really, I mean, if we look at this in a broader perspective, let's ignore the pandemic for just a second. Trump is the incumbent president who is presiding over a peacetime economy with the first real wage growth in a decade, with landmark unemployment and no new wars. That is a massive advantage. The fact that Biden did this well has in large part to do with, yes, media bias, but also a pandemic that highlighted Trump's temperament over his policy successes.
Yeah, I would put
But it's still...
No, go.
Let's see what else is going on. Check the others.
The Adventure and the Originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your worlds. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you'll find them all here.
It's Fox News, but they're not even got voices in.
Just like we covered the 2016 election here at Golden State Times.
And keep that vote very close here in North Carolina. We'll see which way it breaks. I think, guys, you can poke through this map in North Carolina. You can find good news for Joe Biden. You can find good news for Donald Trump as well. So we'll continue to watch that flow in. I keep it a close eye in Ohio. Just a little bit
No one talking.
Joe Biden, a 10-point lead. Do we really think Ohio is a 10-point lead for Joe Biden? Probably not.
Briefly, you are watching Decision 2020 on NBC.
Louisiana, they're anticipating that post-Roe world. They asked voters to consider a constitutional amendment that would make it such that you could that no one would be able to find a right to abortion in the Louisiana Constitution. Now, when I was talking to one strategist, they said it's very unlikely that anyone would find a right to abortion in the Louisiana Constitution, but the idea is that in the event that Roe v. Wade is overturned, there would be no time in which that abortion rights groups could come in and try to make it such that the state would ban it. In Colorado, a much more simple, straightforward measure.
We've got some numbers coming in. Let's look at the Virginia presidential race. And right now, that's too early, but we can report that Biden is leading in Virginia.
Let's look at Georgia. It's a swing state this year. We don't usually say that. It's too early to call, but we're starting to get a few votes in. Let's go to South Carolina. Too early to call there as well.
Allow these immigrants from the Northern Triangle to cruise through Mexico and then want to shack up in America. They get
should be able to lock down. If we don't lock it down, I would be very concerned. But the people who I've been talking to, they care very much.
Nothing there.
So the great state of Indiana.
Really a place that Biden has to win big. Right now, Donald Trump's up in the overall vote.
By Curiosity Stream.
Did you know that despite growing out of dirt in the
Scarlett,
ground, mushrooms are more closely related to animals than they are to plants?
Just moved
Learn more
back
in the
from
kingdom how
Pittsburgh
fungi made
to
our
Idaho
world on Curiosity Stream.
couple weeks ago
Curiosity
after he
Stream is the
graduated
streaming
college,
video
so.
service full of thousands of documentary films and TV shows about nature, science, history, travel, the world's most fascinating people, and pretty much anything else you want to learn about. Spark your curiosity on any device that can stream video. Learn more and sign up today at curiositystream.com.
Sports fans are gearing up at Fanatics.com, the world's largest collection of officially licensed.
It was 53-47.
Nothing there.
4 years ago. Fulton County.
Trying to find
Winner for Hillary Clinton.
live coverage.
I just mentioned this. She got 80% of the vote in 2016. She got a long way to go here. But all these counties around Atlanta, Georgia, that's where the Democrats are going to pick up a lot of votes. Joe Biden tonight, and we'll see how the rural area fills out.
Good stuff. We're going to dig down with you and all.
President Trump and Joe Biden hit the trail. At the center of this campaign, coronavirus.
The story.
Not surprised that on YouTube there's no CNN or anything.
And a number of possible calls that also affect the balance of power potentially.
To their model. In other words, the exact
right like
margin
2016.
of 2016. And then if he wins Georgia, as it's beginning to look like, his chances could go up to 38%. And if he won North Carolina, the race would be in a toss-up.
Wow.
And might I just direct you over to that New York Times needle of a 95% chance of Trump winning the state of Florida, 82% chance for Georgia, 79% for Trump in the state of North Carolina. So maybe we're looking at a toss-up, Crystal.
Oh my God.
Not exactly what we necessarily expected. Georgia, I'm actually really shocked by. I really do wonder if that Fulton County result that we were talking about earlier might be skewing the results here somewhere, or if they're able to count for that another way. Because if that suburban vote doesn't come in for Biden at the margins that they kept bragging to us about, they centered their whole campaign on this. They were like, no, this is it. The ascendant majority, the college-educated white.
Campaign's final
President Trump is that he is a candidate who has kept his promises, and now moving into 2020, he's
got a record.
Well, the gloves are going to come off in 2020.
You mean once he's reelected, the policy, because he's a doer, he's a businessman. He says, okay, we've got a problem here. How do we fix it? Previously, you had people say, okay, we've got a problem here. Let's bring in a bunch of people to talk about it. Trump doesn't do that. He says, talk about it for 5 minutes and let's do something.
I saw President Trump in Milwaukee. I met him in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in one of the suburbs there. It was a private event, and it was pretty exclusive.
Has no decision to announce on the Grand Canyon state.
Nor can we make a call in Texas. Democrats have been trying to turn Texas blue for several presidential cycles. A win by Joe Biden tonight would obviously be devastating to Trump's campaign. The Trump campaign thinks they can pull that out in Texas, but it might be close.
And then there's the upper Midwest, which played such an important role in President Trump's upset victory over Hillary Clinton back in 2016. 3 states from that region are up for grabs at this hour, which Democrats are ahead in all 3 at this moment, according to the Fox News voter analysis, although it's too early to project the winners. In Wisconsin, where pre-election polls favor Joe Biden, although it should be
Biden's ahead and all them, they've already projected the winners, but if Trump is ahead, it's
Michigan,
too early
President
to
Trump barely
declare a
squeaked
winner.
victory than candidate Trump in 2016,
still gotta
and
wait.
Minnesota, where
You can
Trump
tell the
narrowly
bias
lost in
from all the
2016, and
media.
they invested some time in Minnesota this time around.
Stop
We
being
can, however,
biased.
project that President Trump will beat Joe Biden in Kansas based on our voter analysis tonight.
And the Republican president will also defeat his Democratic challenger in the state of Louisiana. In Nebraska, one of 2 states that does not use a winner-take-all method for allocating electoral votes, Trump will win 4 of the state's 5 electoral votes there. Too early to project a presidential winner in Nebraska's 2nd congressional district, which represents the last electoral vote.
Remember, Maine's the other one. We still haven't called that other congressional district there either. And similarly conservative Wyoming, President Trump will rack up another easy victory there. And the story is the same in North Dakota, where the president comes out on top. And unsurprisingly, Trump also wins South Dakota.
In New York, the Fox News decision desk can project that Joe Biden will cruise to an easy victory over President Trump in a place that he used to call his hometown. He calls Florida home now. Biden will also win the state of Colorado, according to our decision desk there, but too early to project a winner in New Mexico, where Biden enjoyed strong support in pre-election polling.
All right, let's turn now to the Senate races, where polls have just closed. The first state, Colorado, where our decision desk can now project that Democratic Governor John Hickenlooper, the former governor there, will oust Republican Senator Cory Gardner in the first Senate flip of the night. Remember, Democrats need 4 net, or 3 and the White House, to take over control. This is 1 net in the Democrats' column. Another closely watched Senate race is the special election in Arizona, where Republican Senator Martha McSally faces a strong challenge from Democrat Mark Kelly, a former astronaut. Kelly currently has a lead over McSally, but again, it's too early to call that race.
Similarly, Michigan Senator Gary Peters, a Democrat, is ahead of Republican John James, although it is too early to project a winner in that race.
Finally, Fox projects that Republicans will keep Senate seats in Nebraska and Wyoming. Made it through that one.
Yeah, that's a long list. We got a lot of information in there. I mean, yeah, obviously some of those races President Trump has spent a lot of time on. In Michigan, polling for John James, a veteran who has run before in the state of Michigan and running again now. Gary Peters giving him a run for his money. That one, as we said, too close to call.
And really,
or
Michigan,
too early to call, I should say.
Yeah. Michigan, where it goes on the presidential, as you look at the race to 270, it's now 129 to 94. How Michigan and the presidential race fares there could affect that Senate race very closely. Let's just talk for a second. Cory Gardner losing to John Hickenlooper. Chris, Gardner was one of the most vulnerable senators out there. Colorado is purplish, leaning blue. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting. There are about 9 toss-up races, but there were 2 that looked likely to flip. One was Alabama, Doug Jones against Tommy Tuberville. And interestingly enough, we haven't called that. Everybody thought that was likely to go to the GOP. We haven't called it yet, not to say it won't happen. And then the other one was sort of leaning Democrat, was the incumbent Republican Cory Gardner in Colorado against the former governor, two-time mayor of Denver, two-time governor of Colorado, failed presidential candidate in this cycle, John Hickenlooper. So assuming that Doug Jones does lose, we're exactly where we were at the beginning of the night, which is a 53-47 majority for the Republicans. They need to pick up 3 more seats, flip 3 more Republican seats, and win the White House so that you'd have Kamala Harris as the tiebreaker, or 4 net. To take over the Senate. A couple of things. I've been in touch with the Biden campaign. They are, we haven't called it, they're waving the white flag of defeat in Florida.
Harris
they
in the
think
White
Florida
House,
is
because
gone,
then this country's going to go to
accentuating the
shit.
positive, making the best case of it. They say that they very much underperformed among Cuban Americans. They think that the president's socialism, Democrats, Biden allegation stuck. But what they're saying is there are not a lot of Cuban Americans outside of Florida, so they don't think that'll be an issue in other Hispanic communities. They say they're overperforming in Ohio in the suburbs. You heard Bill Hemmer talk about around Columbus. They say in Cincinnati they're overperforming as well.
If you mention his name, as in the debate, we have to bring him in. Bill Hemmer. Bill Hemmer's at the board. Pull up Ohio. You can ask him questions.
Well, no, I just actually, can I tell you one thing, Bill?
Sure can. Yeah,
My son, Peter, has just sent me an email, and he says, does Hemmer really know all of those counties, or is he reading off a teleprompter? And I said,
right here.
Do not tug on Bill Hemmer's cape.
No, exactly.
You tell him I said hello, too, Chris. Okay?
Yeah, but are you reading off a teleprompter, or do you really?
No, I'm just looking at this monitor right here, which shows me you, actually. And you, listen, I think
don't start pointing at various points in my face.
This is a perfect time to mention the race of 1876, where you and Britt covered that, right? So now's a perfect time to let you know.
Play nice.
That Brett and I covered the election of 2000 in Tallahassee, and that's where Brett and I became friends for the first time.
That is true.
But
You're at another network.
We've got that on you guys, okay?
But all right, so let me ask you about the Biden campaign claims that they're overperforming in the suburbs of an area that matters a lot to you, Cincinnati. Is that true?
It is true at the moment, based on what I can see a little bit. I would actually buy that argument more so up here in Franklin County, which is Columbus, and up here in Delaware County, where I talked about a little bit before. It's a growing part of the state, also a lot of farms, too, up in Delaware County, too. But I can buy that part of the state a little more than I can the argument in Cincinnati. What I will tell you, Chris, however, so what are we? Our pop out here, we're at 59% of the vote in Ohio. And this is Montgomery County. That is Dayton, Ohio. That is one of a few counties that the president flipped from 2016 to 2020. So what's happening in Dayton, Ohio? Joe Biden's got a clear lead, 60 to 38% right now, but the raw numbers still are a bit on the low side. We're going to get that up probably another double, I would say, in Montgomery County. I would also say, since you're talking about the suburbs of Cincinnati, this is Butler County. It's north of Cincinnati, the home of Miami University, Oxford, Ohio, class of 1987. So this is Donald Trump right now with 64% of the vote from 4 years ago. See the raw numbers right there, about 160,000. This is where we are now. We're about 110,000, so at least 50,000 votes are still outstanding. Trump's at 53.7. Just go back again, he was at 64.8. He could get there, but again, a lot of those votes right now outstanding would have to go to him. So I can buy that argument a little bit, Chris, I think, but so much of, come on, so much of this, 41% of the vote, is yet to be.
All right, Juan, Dana, Britt, you're in the game here with Bill. So he's in. Go ahead. You can ask.
I want to ask Bill a question, but I do want to point something out about Colorado and Cory Gardner, who I was always kind of wondering. I heard he was in trouble, and, you know, we kind of knew that Colorado's trended blue for some time now. But listen to this number. In the state of Colorado, men versus women in the vote. Biden won the men vote 49 to 47, but listen to this number with women, 61-36. Biden over Trump. Now, it's pretty hard for an incumbent Republican running with a guy at the top of the ticket who gets crushed that badly by the majority gender in our country to win re-election, and he didn't.
So who else has a question for Bill Hemmer at the board? It's Ask
My
Bill.
son Peter does, but he's not here.
Peter's not here.
Peter's not here.
He doesn't get to play. Juan, what about it?
Peter can text me too, by the way.
Okay, I'll do that.
We'll get you on the hotline. The thing is about the Cory Gardner too is that he was the most bipartisan member there, and as you look across these states, if a Republican is going to lose, and you're looking at, you think there's going to be wholesale change. I don't really think so. John Hickenlooper was a governor of Colorado, and I know Colorado is more of a reliably blue state now for Democrats, but it's still fairly moderate, and so there's that. I guess, Bill, one of the things that I was wondering is, in Colorado, how much, we're talking about suburban
look
vote
at this
a lot,
down here.
and I don't know if we can see that.
Look down here. Rhode Island, president, 32% precincts in. Trump is up 54 to 43%, yet they're declaring Biden the winner of Rhode Island. This is what's bullshit. They're already declaring the state for Biden, yet Trump is in the lead. What the fuck?
Can't really see it just yet. It really hasn't filled in just yet.
Well, that's a terrible question then.
That's okay.
I'll do better next time.
How about North Carolina, Charlotte, Mecklenburg, all that
I think this is really interesting, guys. You have about 22% of the votes still to be tallied here. Joe Biden's sitting in a pretty good spot at the moment. You mentioned Mecklenburg. This is Charlotte right here on the map. He's got a 2-to-1 lead right now. Fast math tells me about 500,000. About 500,000 votes there. So that's about the mark where we were last.
Let's check out the other.
Thanks very much to see you, Vega. As we've said, Ohio a must-win for the president.
A must-win for the president, George, and our team is in touch with sources close to the president. And I got to tell you, we are hearing that the Trump campaign is becoming increasingly worried right now about what they are seeing in that state. They are working here in the White House in these war rooms where they are watching these returns come in, and they are becoming increasingly nervous about what they're seeing out of Ohio. One senior source telling our team it's much closer than it should be. They're kicking themselves, frankly, for not having gone there more. The Trump team did not hold any rallies in Ohio over 2020 compared to holding 5 in Pennsylvania just this past weekend alone. They had to cut ad spending there in the final weeks because of this cash crunch that they've been facing in the campaign, foregoing millions of dollars in ads. And George, you'll remember this. It's a minor incident, really, in the grand scheme of the things we cover here in this White House, but worth pointing out on a night like tonight. Remember this controversy from just a few months ago where President Trump called for a ban on Goodyear, on the brand Goodyear, after he accused the company of banning its employees from wearing his MAGA gear. Goodyear is based in Akron, Ohio, George.
As is LeBron James, and he's been quite active in this campaign as well. Mary Bruce, we saw that Joe Biden at the last minute went from Pennsylvania, jumped into Ohio on the final day, hoping to make a play for this state.
Yeah, they believed that what they were seeing on the ground showed that this state was in play, that it was increasingly competitive, and that appears to be reflected in these numbers that we are seeing so far tonight. Biden's team is encouraged, very much so, by what they are seeing coming out so far. And I want to hit on a point that Tom was making about suburban women, because in these preliminary exit data, suburban women backed Trump by 9 points in 2016. But tonight, in this preliminary data, suburban women are narrowly backing Biden. That bodes well for Biden's team, not just in states like Ohio, but also as you look to those other critical Midwestern states like Michigan and Wisconsin, possibly even in Pennsylvania, as they try to rebuild that blue wall that Donald Trump smashed through 4 years ago. And it also speaks, George, to the power of women voters who tonight could determine the outcome of this election. They were critical to delivering Donald Trump the White House. Women voters tonight could be critical to taking it back.
Martha Raddatz, you spoke to a lot of them on the road this summer.
Well, no, because we've got a problem in the suburbs, and the problem that you're talking about in Ohio and some of what we've seen in other states, in North Carolina and Virginia.
I think if the president can win the significant 6, we're into overtime, and I think the president likes his chances in overtime. He's got a Republican legislature here, Democratic governor, but a Republican legislature. He's got a very close ally Republican governor and Republican legislature here, and he's got 5 or 6 Supreme Court justices on his side.
I'll tell you this: the Trump campaign, by the way, will not.
Not even showing it live.
Do you think that
in this country for 100 years, and as Mary said, they may determine that tonight. But you also want to listen to what Donald Trump has been saying to women, especially suburban women, which doesn't land very well with many of them. I'm also getting your husbands back to work. They want to get back to work, right? You know how many women are in the workforce. In 2019, 76 million women aged 16 and over were employed. George.
Martha Raddatz, you channeled Cokie well. We miss her tonight. David Muir, what do the exits say about Ohio right now?
Well, it's really fascinating about Ohio. I wonder if we're going to come back to what Heidi Heitkamp said earlier with President Trump sort of talking down the mail-in vote across this country in the weeks preceding the election, that perhaps this is what we're seeing unfolding in Ohio tonight, because the exit polling tells a different story. A lot of the issues that Joe Biden sort of laid out, he said, you know, we got to take care of the virus first. The economy will come with it second. The Ohio exit polls show that they believe fix the economy, open the country first before the coronavirus. They prefer Trump to Biden handling the economy. They prefer Trump to Biden handling the pandemic. So given what we're seeing in the exit polls, and again, one of the other trends that we're also seeing is Donald Trump is not underwater with approval in Ohio. It's one of his strongest showings tonight in the preliminary exit polls so far. So this would show portends a good night for President Trump in Ohio. I do wonder if the get out the vote and the early voting campaign by the Biden camp, the push for an early vote, is actually helping them there significantly tonight.
A lot of vote yet to come in the state of Ohio, 51-47 right now. Nate, let's take a look back at your forecast and show everybody what happens if Ohio goes from red to blue, if Joe Biden happens to win.
So what I have here is if Trump wins Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, in which case it's a more competitive race, but Biden counters by winning Ohio, then that all of a sudden undoes those positive results for Trump. You'll see the numbers come up here. Biden's going to, I think, wind up here north of 99%, because if Trump loses Ohio, he's going to lose in all probability Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, which are bluer states, and that makes for a losing map for him, most likely.
And it really does show the importance right now, because you came into the night showing Donald Trump with about a 10% chance. So even if you give him those three key states we've been looking at in the Southeast right now, Georgia, North Carolina, and Florida, you flip Ohio and it turns everything around.
Right. So he has to win both paths, right? He has to win the southern path and hold the states that he flipped from Clinton in 2016 in the north. If he only does one, then it'll be close. It will not be a Biden landslide, but Biden would still be elected president.
It is so close right now. Nate Silver, thanks very much. We have to take another quick break.
Welcome to Disney Plus. Are you ready? Drop in and explore. The action, the adventure, and the originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your worlds. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you'll find them all here on Disney.
Let's go back to this one.
If that's the obstruction here, we've got a lot of votes still to be counted down there in Georgia. I don't believe we have called Florida yet. Nope. But right now, you're looking at north of 3 percentage points in Florida. And I'll tell you, Brett and Martha, the inside numbers guys in the Republican Party in Florida, even at midday today, said Donald Trump, based on the current track of in-person voting today, that he would win the state by upwards of 4 points. That's still possible with 9% of the vote out in the Sunshine State tonight. It looks like he's going to win that.
Thanks, Bill. We'll be back to you shortly. The Fox News Decision Desk can now project that Democrats will retain control of the House of Representatives and expand their majority by at least 5 seats. That's a major boost for Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who has pledged to roll back much of President Trump's first-term agenda if he loses re-election. So some thoughts on that from our panel. Dana, there have been projections that Democrats could pick up as many as 15 seats in the most recent Cook political analysis. Your thoughts on that call?
Well, again, the suburbs, right? So Carl just mentioned it. We brought it up a few times. If you think back to 2018, when we were here doing midterm election analysis,
I can already tell you, Biden somehow pulls out a win and all that. There's all sorts of fraud going on within the U.S. election.
Now remember,
Because
Those
of all this
18 were
mail-in
against impeachment of the president.
balloting, I
They wanted her
guarantee
to be
the
much
Democrats
more conciliatory towards
are
the president when
sending
it came
out
to a second
all sorts of
stimulus bill
votes,
that
because
never
there's been
came.
all sorts of
And yet they all held
people
on.
arrested
They were
and
able to
busted
raise much
for
more money than the Democrats
throwing
had
away
this,
Trump
than the
votes,
Republicans.
hiding
Carl was mentioning
absentee
Act
ballots.
Blue. They were just flooded
One
with money,
state
so they were able
had
to
more
hold on to those seats.
ballots
Not
than
only
they
that,
have
but then
registered
they gained
voters.
Another 5, if this analysis is accurate, maybe even more. And I think that when
Absentee
you look at the
ballots,
suburban districts,
they
that will be
can't
interesting.
fucking-
And one other point on that
They can't
is
fucking
this is 2020,
verify
so it's the
who
beginning of a
is
new
sending in the
decade. That
ballots.
means that we have a census and we
I'm
will
at-
have
I'm located in
redistricting
Idaho.
opportunities. State legislatures all across this country as
I
well
will be right
could
back.
be changing again, and will Democrats decide to kind of try to solidify those gains? It's very hard to flip those back.
On your thoughts about this, about the House. Speaker Pelosi will retain control. She's obviously been doing this negotiation that was going nowhere with Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, and the coronavirus stimulus never came to be before the election. She holds on to control. It depends on what the rest of Washington looks like, how the House deals with it.
Well, I think the key point that strikes me is that, picking up on something Dana was just saying, you see that these suburban districts really respond well to moderate Democrats. And yet, in Trump world, oftentimes when they talk about the House, they talk about the squad, AOC, and that becomes kind of the leading figure, the face of Democrats in the House. But in reality, going back to 2018, the people who boosted the Democratic prospects in the House were these moderate and oftentimes female Democratic candidates recruited by Pelosi and a lot of the fundraisers. And I think that that's what you're seeing now grow. I don't think that the way that we talk about the House is in accord with the reality of the House in terms of the way Pelosi has managed it and in terms of the people who get elected to the House right now on the Democratic side.
Some Republicans are envious of the way she cracks the whip and keeps everybody in line in the House of Representatives as far as votes for Democrats, and she'll continue to do that. Maybe the most consequential race is still too early to call, including Florida, 29 electoral votes. As you take a look at our probability meter, 93%. We have not called it, but 93% for President Trump. Votes that could make or break President Trump. Electoral votes on the way to 270. We'll be right back.
We're at the movies and we need to silence our phone. Who knows where that button is?
I don't have silent.
Everyone does, right up here.
It happens to all of us. We buy a new home and we turn into our parents. What I do is help new homeowners overcome this.
Was that an adjustable spanner? Good choice, Steve. Okay, don't forget, you're not assisting him. You hired him. You have nowhere to sit. You have too many. Who else reads books about submarines? My dad. Yeah.
Oh, those are...
Progressive can't protect you from becoming your parents, but we can protect your home and auto when you bundle with us.
Look at that.
The workplace doesn't look like this anymore. Now you work from anywhere. Your chairs have changed. Your dress code has changed. And with the biggest distributed workforce in human history, you better hope that your security has changed too. SentinelOne is the only cybersecurity platform purpose-built for the remote workforce. The world has changed. Have you?
With ServPro, our expert cleaning service helps reduce the spread of viral pathogens. Put the certified ServPro Clean Shield in your window and let your customers know that you're committed to a higher standard of clean. For a free quote, visit servpro.com.
A small thing like Kori krill oil can make a big difference for our health. From pure Antarctic waters, krill are an omega-3 force of nature and supports immune, heart, brain, joint, eye, and skin health. The ocean's superior omega.
Keep up to date with the Fox News app. Follow all races across the nation with real-time voter data. America is watching. Download the free Fox News app today.
Here's a hint about how to make working from home less stressful and more comfortable. Make the switch to X-Chair. Infinite side-float recline and dynamic variable lumbar support make the X-Chair a customer favorite at home and work. The X-Chair lets you customize for the same measure of amazing comfort no matter what your size. Every model is in stock, ready to ship the next day. And you can get $100 off any model on our website. Your new normal? Incredibly comfortable. Call or click to order today.
When we started our business, we were paying like an arm and a leg for the postage. I remember setting up ShipStation. I think it was just like 1 or 2 clicks. Everything was up and running. I was printing out labels and saving money.
ShipStation saves us so much time. It makes it really easy and seamless. Pick an order, print everything you need, slap the label onto the box, and it's ready to go.
Our cost for shipping, like, we're cut in half, just like that.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers. Go to shipstation.com/try and get 2 months free.
So Florida 29 electoral votes, still too early to award to President Trump or Joe Biden at this hour. Let's check in with Steve Harrigan, who is on the ground there in Lauderhill, Florida. Hi again, Steve.
Martha, back to you.
Steve, thank you very much.
Martha, they're counting ballots behind me in Broward County, and a couple of storylines really developing here in Florida. One is what's going on in Miami-Dade County. That's, of course, high population, heavily Democratic county. It's a county Hillary Clinton won by 30 points 4 years ago, and something the Democrats need to run on big margins in. However, Biden is leading by just 9 points, so Trump dramatically overperforming in Miami-Dade County. A second storyline is tremendous turnout in some conservative areas. Collier County, where Naples is, 90.1% turnout. And the Villages, conservative bastion, senior citizens in Central Florida, 88% turnout. So it looks like President Trump is so far running up big margins in conservative areas and keeping it close in Miami-Dade, likely through strength with Cuban voters and Hispanic voters. Finally, officials here say things have gone smoothly. The polls opened on time. There have been no security incidents, and the early ballots were processed and counted and posted early. Martha, back to you.
Steve, thank you very much.
Democrats retaining majority of the House, even picking up a few seats tonight, as we just told you. We're also watching the Senate very closely, specifically North Carolina, a race that could be a decider whether Democrats take control of that chamber. Mark Meredith is on the ground at Republican Senator Thom Tillis's headquarters in Mooresville. Mark?
Brett, good evening. Here at Tillis headquarters, they've been watching the numbers very closely, and within the last hour or so, they have seen this race tighten to less than 2 percentage points that they are trailing the former state senator, Wells Iraq War veteran Cal Cunningham. This is a race that, of course, is not important just only in North Carolina, but everyone that's going to be looking at the balance of power is going to be monitoring what happens here in North Carolina. This was a state that saw record early voting turnout. We saw people that voted the second they could when absentee ballots first went out, as well as October 15th. The day that early voting began in this state. We were at a polling location today, not too far from where we are now, and it was amazing to see that it was so calm because so many of millions of North Carolinians had already taken the chance to vote. I just got done speaking with one of Tillis's supporters as well as advisors, and they, again, were looking at those numbers very closely, remaining somewhat optimistic, but also not certainly popping any champagne corks here at any point. This race is also just so fascinating because it's tied to the presidential race so much. North Carolina, that swing state, 15 electoral votes, Brett and Martha, as you know very well. If the president were able to carry this could be good news to bring Tillis over the finish line. However, of course, if Joe Biden ends up catching the state, this could also be a big boost for the Democratic Senate candidate. There's also a governor's race here in this state that we're watching. Democratic governor doing very well. This has been a big referendum on him when it came to the state's COVID restrictions, because in this state, compared to other states like South Carolina, Georgia, you still see several different restrictions in place for businesses. And while you have plenty of Republicans that are saying they want to see the state reopen, the governor taking a much more cautious approach, and it's been curious to see whether or not that was going to be what voters were focused on the most here, not just where we are in this part of North Carolina, but throughout the entire state. At Tillis headquarters, it may look like there's nobody right here behind me, but there are plenty of people in this room. Everyone is wearing the masks, not just the media, but also Tillis's supporters, an indication that they're taking things seriously, not only with just COVID, but with how the state sees their operation here. Brett and Martha?
All right, Mark, thank you. Just pointing out, we've already called the House for control to the Democrats, but interesting races along the way. Madison Cawthorn will win in North Carolina. That is Mark Meadows of the White House Chief of Staff seat. Hit a bumpy road there in the campaign. He will become the youngest member.
Stupid Green Deal, though, shut down all the gas and coal plants.
The Republican National Convention standing up on the stage during that, but he ran into some controversy along the way and secured that seat. Ronnie Jackson, also of note in Texas, not a huge surprise win win, but you may know that he was the president's doctor at the White House at one point, and Ronny Jackson will now also be a member of Congress.
So through the night, we'll pepper some of those interesting races, even though control will stay with the Democrats.
So let's get some analysis from Molly Hemingway, who is joining us now, senior editor at The Federalist, and Byron York, Washington Examiner correspondent. Both are Fox News contributors. Great to have both of you with us this evening. Molly, your observations on the evening so far?
Well, we know a little bit about a lot of states. It would be nice to know a lot more about a few states that are out there. But one of the things that is definitely an emerging story is about the closing of the racial gap. There's usually a pretty big racial gap in voting where minorities strongly favor Democratic candidates. And Donald Trump obviously is doing very well in Florida on the strength of not just Cuban voters, but also Venezuelan and Colombian and other minority voters. And there's starting to be an indication that this is happening in other states as well. You know, in Texas, Joe Biden is performing, in Ohio and Georgia, in these minority communities. It is really stunning that it is Donald Trump, someone that the media have painted as, you know, a racist racial demagogue, who is managing this transformation of the Republican Party toward a more multiracial working class party. And regardless of what the eventual outcome is tonight, that's something that Republican strategists have to be thinking long and hard about. Because the way that Donald Trump has been able to get more outreach and get more buy-in from minority voters has been through this conservative populism that he advocates. It's a really interesting thing that we know thus far as we wait to learn more.
You know, Byron, Republicans, Trump supporters say not only was he running against Joe Biden, but he was running against the mainstream media over 3+ years of kind of really battling back and forth. Your thoughts about this race, where it stands, and kind of that framework?
Well, you know, I spent the last week of the race in Pennsylvania talking to a lot of Republicans who all strongly believed that there was something they called the hidden Trump vote, that there were people out there who intended to vote for Trump, but who did not tell not only pollsters, and that's where the media comes in, because they associated all pollsters with the media and they did not trust them. But some of them also didn't tell their friends or their coworkers or even their family. And I talked to some pollsters who were working for the larger Trump effort, and they believed it was a 2, maybe 3 percentage points. Maybe that's what we're seeing in Florida right now. On the other hand, not sure you can make that case in Georgia and North Carolina right now, but clearly the level of hostility and distrust toward the media among Trump supporters is just off the scale.
Byron, just staying with you for a moment, when you look at what Molly was discussing, you know, we see in a number of states the president coming in the 30% range with Latino voters in places where there's a large presence
media has been nothing but
voters.
against Trump since
do you
day
agree
one.
with Molly that we're seeing
lying and all
you know,
sorts
sort
of
of
stuff?
an attraction to President Trump from those voters that we haven't seen in the past?
Yeah, that's a potentially huge development. Remember, after the 2012 presidential election, Mitt Romney lost to Barack Obama. The RNC, the Republican National Committee, did this huge study. They called it the autopsy. And the only conclusion they came to was that Republicans had to do more to attract Hispanic voters. And if President Trump is in fact attracting more minority voters, black and Hispanic and other minority voters, I mean, that's a very, very big deal for him. It's kind of ironic that some of the people who were involved in the RNC study opposed President Trump very, very strongly. But nonetheless, this is something the Republican Party has been trying to do for a long time.
And in addition to all of that, Molly, COVID is basically on this ballot as well.
Well, I think that is another issue that has been a very important thing for the Biden campaign to push, and also many people in the media. I think it is interesting that you were just talking about the feeling that Trump is running not just against Joe Biden, but the media. There were so many different ways that the media assisted the Joe Biden campaign throughout his entire campaign once he won the nomination. Prior to winning the nomination, they weren't so sure, but then they all got on board. Whether that was hiding negative stories about Joe Biden, hiding positive stories about President Donald Trump, hiding successes or whatnot, elevating the campaign themes that the Biden campaign wanted, or really an overemphasis on polls. We know enough right now to know that there has been too much emphasis on polling as opposed to the larger issues. Florida was supposed to be a win for Biden. Some people had it a strong win for Biden. It is not going to be, and that is interesting. And if we could have covered more about how the Democrats' left-leaning push toward, some of these socialist messages, how that didn't resonate with minority voters and other people, that would be an important thing for us to know, that if we rely too much on polling, we miss some of these stories that we could find out by talking more to the people who will be voting.
Last thing, turning to the Senate, Byron, we've got the race in Michigan, John James versus incumbent Gary Peters. That seems like it's a very tight race, and there was a lot of prospect for John James. And as you look at it here, again, this is only 19% of the precincts in Michigan, but how the president does in Michigan will affect this race. Going in, James was outperforming the president in some polls by a couple points.
I think you're going to see in some other states the Senate candidate outperforming the president. That one would be a very big deal. We all assumed, although it hasn't been called, that there would be a Republican pickup in Alabama, where Doug Jones would lose his seat there. In Michigan, you have a Republican challenging an incumbent Democrat. So Republicans, the way they had looked at this race is they got 53 right now. They pick up one with Alabama, and then they start subtracting. And Cory Gardner has already lost tonight. Michigan would be a huge, huge factor in Republicans keeping the Senate.
Molly, let's take a look at the South Carolina Senate race as well. Lindsey Graham versus Jamie Harrison. This is obviously a race that's gotten a ton of attention, millions of dollars poured into this race, and this is how it shapes up right now. Also pointing out that we're just at 29% of the count in there, 54% for Graham, 43% for Harrison.
Yes, this was a race where, again, you had some early polls showing that Jamie Harrison was really strongly contending with Lindsey Graham. A lot of savvy South Carolinian watchers said that wasn't actually true, that these Quinnipiac polls were quite wrong. And I think tonight you will see evidence of that. However, those polls were very important for getting money to pour into that state. That race saw so much money raised to defeat Lindsey Graham. He'll probably do fine. But also, I just want to say, it's a good thing.
Rhode Island, 32% in. They already say Biden won at 43%, while Trump is at 54%. Give me a fucking break.
Thing to remind people that a lot of these results that we're seeing when states first close and you're starting to get results are those early votes. And it's worth remembering that the Democratic strategy was to get as many people early voting as possible. And so I think sometimes people are surprised when they see a race flipping so much from strong Democratic support.
Check out the others.
At risk there. The Democrats can see that they are likely to lose a seat in Alabama, Doug Jones's seat. That means if you go back to the math here, if they lose that seat, they would then need to pick up 4 seats. Democrats would if Joe Biden wins, because in that instance, Kamala Harris would then become the tiebreaker as vice president. If Donald Trump wins, that means the Democrats would then have to pick up 5 seats if they do lose that race in Alabama.
Mary Bruce, thanks very much. Let's take a deeper dive now at the state of Pennsylvania. We've been calling that the most critical battleground of the night tonight. 19% of the expected vote is in right now. Joe Biden has a large lead. And Tom, why don't you try to run through some of the key counties in Pennsylvania that we're going to be watching tonight?
George, we were just looking at Pennsylvania a little closely, and the numbers are really all over the place. There's not really a narrative we can really talk about at this point. Look, for instance, I'll give you Scranton right here. Lackawanna, Donald Trump is on top in Joe Biden's hometown, and he's overperforming there for Republicans. We go just south, Lucerne County. This is Wilkes-Barre. This is a swing county that Donald Trump won 4 years ago. Tonight, Joe Biden's on top. But again, only 29% of the vote in. On the big cities where Democrats really have to win, Allegheny, Pittsburgh, you can see how high Joe Biden's there. That's the type of number Democrats want to make sure they can hold in Pennsylvania, not only in Pittsburgh, but also in Philadelphia. Let me open this up a little more as we get to Philadelphia and the suburbs. George, look, I don't want people to have a freak out here. 93%, that's obviously
only
incredible.
4,000 people voting for
9%
Trump
of the vote in at this moment. Let me squeeze this down a little bit. We'll look at one of the suburb counties, the exurb counties around Philadelphia, where Democrats have to run up the score. Look, Joe Biden's doing good, but again, George, it's so early. There's nothing really to pull from.
Do we have anything from Erie County? And then I want to bring John in.
Yeah, Erie County, we have Donald Trump, barely won this. Just by a percentage point 4 years ago, but it was one of those swing counties that Obama won. And you can see right now, I mean, John, it's neck and neck, but 4% in. 4% in.
But I've got to say, if you go back to the Philly suburbs, Montgomery County, Delaware County, you see Biden with nearly an 80-point lead. It's 16% of the vote in. What's really important here, though, George, is, as I understand it, almost all of the vote that has been counted are people that voted today on Election Day. Pennsylvania didn't start counting
in those collar counties of Philadelphia?
Yes. This is day of voting, so they still have to count all of the mail-in vote. They didn't start opening the envelopes until today. That's going to take a long time. It's actually going to take several days. That mail-in vote is expected to really lean heavily towards Joe Biden. So I think it's interesting. It's still a small amount, no doubt, but I think that it's interesting already in the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Those used to be swing areas. Now they're trending deep blue.
I mean, early indication, again, 17% of the expected vote in, but it's day of vote.
Some exit polls for Pennsylvania?
Yeah, Pennsylvania, when you compare it to Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania actually in the exit polls showed Donald Trump's worst performance so far tonight when it comes to his approval rating. Let's dive in here and see what the exit polls show us. Again, these are preliminary, but the exit polls, as we mentioned earlier in the night, do reflect both, as John Carl was mentioning, people who voted today and those who were voting early in person. As you can see, let's try to refresh that and see if the job performance comes up. 52% disapproving of Donald Trump and his performance. Whether or not to contain the pandemic first or rebuild the economy, you can see overwhelmingly they say we've got to take care of this coronavirus in the U.S. And they say that Joe Biden is the best to handle that. When you look at the economy, Donald Trump and Joe Biden neck and neck in Pennsylvania. The most important issue in Pennsylvania, the economy, pandemic, they're behind. It's interesting. Let's look at independents in Pennsylvania. Joe Biden owning independents so far as the exit polls are concerned in Pennsylvania.
Chris Christie, neighboring state of yours in New Jersey, always going to be an uphill battle for the president, but essential.
Listen, vital, has to have it. And I do think, though, that the things that we're seeing still, I think this is very early, but there's underperformance in Philadelphia, even though those numbers don't indicate it. That's what I continue to hear. And so I think they're still feeling like they can turn out their day of vote in a way that's going to make it very close. No one's predicting a win there yet that I've heard, but no one's bemoaning a loss yet either.
Rahm Emanuel, the Biden campaign probably spent more time, energy, money, focus on Pennsylvania than any other state.
There's no doubt about it. And the vice president, do you remember in your town hall when a guy stood up and was, oh, I know you, you're a sheriff. I mean, he's got to feel like a precinct captain or a county exec. They look at these numbers, and I would say there's a regional thing that's starting to happen. You look at the Ohio number, you look at Pennsylvania numbers, they're early, but there are trend lines where Joe Biden is outperforming in the suburbs. He's outperforming among working class, and he's also outperforming in the rural areas, even though you don't count it. Just minimizing the losses is doing well. So he is doing really in those areas well. The vote total, in the sense of how many people show up in the suburbs versus working industrial areas versus urban, is going to be what's really interesting. Because I think the urban areas may not be performing to the kind of baseline of what people were expecting.
Yvette, are you seeing that across the country right now? The urban area is not performing as well.
That's not what we're seeing, and that's what I want to make sure I reserve comment until we see that. We're seeing a lot of, particularly in Ohio, Hamilton County, Cuyahoga County, Franklin County, huge turnout there. I mean, we're running not just on the presidential, but down ticket. We're winning all these races down ticket as well, and so I think we'll just have to wait and see. Some of those places, like Cuyahoga, for instance, people were still in line up until about a half an hour ago.
Those are the Cuyahoga County. For tonight. Wait and see. And we're going to be doing that with every state all night long. Sarah Fagan, the Trump campaign was hoping after that last debate where they thought that Joe Biden made a blunder by talking about ending fossil fuels and the issue of fracking. They thought that could give them headway in western Pennsylvania and coal country in these final 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think it probably will give him some headway. Whether he wins it or not, we'll see. I think Pennsylvania, to me, is the best case of the mirage, the red and blue mirage. We don't know whether these are early votes, whether these are absentee votes, whether they're day of votes yet. And so I would go back to something Nate Silver said, has been repeating over and over tonight. Wait till an entire jurisdiction is in before you get too excited.
I think we have to do that. There's no question about that. Eva Pilgrim, you spent a lot of time with suburban women in the state of Pennsylvania.
That's right, George. And specifically with moms, a lot of them telling me they usually avoid talking about politics amongst their mom groups. But this year, that just wasn't possible because so many of the things that are very political right now directly impact them and their children. In their text chains, you can see what some of those things are. They're talking about masking their children. They're talking about virtual learning. Are you sending your kid back to school? Should we go on vacation this summer? Those were all the discussions that they were having. And a lot of these moms telling me that, previously in other elections, they weren't really that plugged in. They've maybe voted in a presidential election prior, but this year they thought it was very important to vote. George?
Eva Pilgrim, thanks very much. Let's go to Nate Silver before we go to break. Nate, let's take one more look at your magical I shouldn't call it magical, your very scientific forecast there. And what happens if Pennsylvania flips this year, went to Donald Trump 4 years ago, goes to Joe Biden this time around?
So again, I'm going to make things a bit more suspenseful, give Donald Trump Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, but then if you give Biden Pennsylvania, it's going to show as the numbers going up. We'll see where it calculates here in a second. It's not quite the same as Ohio because it's a little bit of a more purple state, but you see Biden's up to 91% despite losing the South. If he wins back Pennsylvania, he'd have to hold the Wisconsin.
So that's really interesting. It kind of brings you back to where you were at the beginning of the night.
It narrows the range, right? If Biden wins Pennsylvania, things are not going to fall apart from him in the Midwest. He's also not going to have any type of landslide victory. But it would bring the probability back. It would mean that you have a close election where Biden is favored, but it's this kind of wide range of possible outcomes.
Chris?
Just heard from Republican leadership in Ohio that Trump has now pulled ahead in Ohio and that they believe Trump will win between 1.5 and 2 points.
Right now, what we're seeing on our board right now is 64% of the expected vote in. Joe Biden just ahead by a little bit, but you're saying you're getting that from your sources right now inside Ohio. They're looking at the vote that they're still waiting on, and they believe, at least, we're not ready to say that, they believe that Donald Trump will win the state of Ohio. Have to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
I'm looking at all this right now. There's people on Twitter showing that Trump is winning in Virginia up by 18% and 300,000 votes.
I've been quested to bring
Yet they've already declared Biden the winner of the state. That's bullshit.
This is no place for a child. Wherever I go, he goes.
I'll show you tweets.
The Mandalorian, new season now streaming
That's why
only
Trump
on
is winning
Disney
huge
Plus.
in Virginia, yet everyone's
Friday
calling it
nights,
for Biden. How can he be up 18% and 300,000 votes in Virginia and still be losing?
Stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the
Fox called it for Biden 2 hours ago. Can't fucking call this election.
Central on ABC.
Can't call
With
it
so
for
much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir.
We have made it through another week together.
America's most watched program across all of television.
Wednesday night, get ready for
a con so big, so outrageous, never seen anything like it before.
Meet the Prince, pretending to be part of one of the world's richest royal families.
Living large.
But
holy cow, who is this person?
He stole approximately $8.1 million.
Where was all this money coming from? Buckle up.
Just the tip of the iceberg.
I'm Whoopi Goldberg. This is The Con.
All new and royally good. Wednesday on ABC.
Oh, look at the clear sky.
Hey, clear sky, guys. Made it through.
Change is difficult, but this is my home. This is where I want to be.
Let's see what goes on because this is getting ridiculous.
I love that town. I'm not going to bail on it.
Big deal. New beginning.
Rebuilding Paradise. Network premieres Sunday at 9 on National Geographic.
Hello? This is Montana Highway Patrol. You're looking for a couple of missing teenagers.
That's right. Last seen in a red Focus.
The steering wheel is getting stiff.
Lock the door.
We're fine.
Got ourselves a predicament.
When the night has come. Good Morning America tomorrow morning. Wake up to real-time answers, real-time results the morning after this historic election with the most powerful team in politics live. First thing in the morning, ABC. Good Morning America.
Yeah, see, this election, they're all saying they're not going to know the results until
We are back now. ABC
Wednesday,
Election
Thursday, or
headquarters in New York,
Friday,
coming up on
because
10
they're
p.m.
counting
in the
all
East.
these
There you
votes.
see the electoral map. Joe Biden has won 9 states, 89 electoral votes. Donald Trump has won 10 states
only
and
about
72
60 million
electoral
people
votes. All the big swing
voted.
states still in play right now. Let's take a look now
Absentee.
at the state
And now
of
it's
Georgia.
at
one of the key
100
battlegrounds
million?
at the end
Where'd that
of
other
this
40
campaign.
million come
16
from?
electoral votes, 46% of the vote in right now, and Donald Trump has a fairly sizable lead right now. Tom Yamas, what more can we say about where Georgia is right now?
Look, we can't stop talking about Georgia yet because it's still very, very early. And the reason why I say that is because look at Atlanta right now. We're still waiting for a lot of the vote to come out of some of these huge counties where Democrats are going to run up the vote. Joe Biden's doing well in these counties around Atlanta where he needs to win. He's building off Hillary Clinton's lead that she had here. He's expanding the map even further. The problem for Joe Biden is at the red counties, President Trump's base, and this is something we're seeing throughout the country, at least in some of the big battleground states. President Trump's base is showing up and they're voting. And a lot of this, you see all the red around here, almost the same as 2016. The blue counties are the same. What we have to find out, what we have to figure out is what the count is at the end of the night in the Atlanta counties. If Joe Biden can run up the score there, he can tighten this up. But President Trump has got to be happy with this number at this hour right now. But again, a lot of the vote out in Atlanta.
Lindsay Davis, what are you seeing in Georgia?
You know, Georgia is 6th overall when it comes to the total number of coronavirus cases in our country. I think that one good image is that Governor Kemp today dropped off his ballot in a ballot drop box because he's quarantining because he came into contact with somebody who tested positive on Friday, though it's worth noting that he also did take a rapid test and is subsequently tested negative. But look, we're seeing the same thing that we saw in North Carolina, where the 3 counties that are hardest hit by coronavirus, all are counties that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. We'll remember that Governor Kemp was criticized for trying to open up Georgia early, and he then had that lawsuit against Keisha Bottoms, the mayor of Atlanta, when she implemented that mask mandate, which he later dropped. But what's interesting is, black voters make up 32% of the eligible voting population in Georgia. And a lot has been said tonight about the black voters not turning out. And I do think that it's relevant to talk about the disproportionate effect on black and brown communities. Of course, black people make up 13% of the population, but 20% of the COVID deaths, 1 out of 900 black people have died as a result of coronavirus.
Okay, Lindsay Davis, thanks very much. Let's take another look at the state of Texas right now. Not expected to be a battleground this year, but it is close right now with about 76% of the expected vote in. Donald
An
Trump
hour
has
ago,
about a
they
2-point
said
lead
Joe
over
Biden was going to
right
win
now. Tom, what
Texas.
stands out?
It was
George,
up
as I
by
put Texas
15
here in the middle of
points,
the
and
map so
here
you
he
can see a
is
little
showing
bigger.
he's
Absentee,
down.
basically neck and neck, George. Look at that right there. Democrats had to build a lead on the early vote, especially in a state like Texas, but Republicans showed up early as well, and they voted there in Texas. Look, a lot of red counties. Texas has been Republican for a very long time. Jimmy Carter was the last Democrat to win this state. Some things that are good for Democrats are around the Dallas County suburb areas, and we'll show you why. So Fort Worth, which is usually a Republican stronghold, let me clear this out here. Tarrant County, 49%. It's neck and neck. President Trump won this by almost 10 points 4 years ago. We go a little bit higher here to Denton County. It's the same story. President Trump underperforming there. But here's something that's interesting. In Houston, Harris County, the biggest county so far, it's essentially the same race as it was 4 years ago. Harris County, Houston, is an area where the Democrats have to run up the score even more if they have any chance of winning in Texas, because you go to one of these red counties, George, look at that, in East Texas, it's 3-1, and it's like that all across East Texas.
Matt Dowd is in Texas. Matt, it looks like John Cornyn is going to be returned as a Republican senator from Texas, but in the final days of his campaign, he started to break a little bit, uncharacteristically, from President Trump.
Well, I think he saw the numbers in Texas and the changing nature. He's catching up to the changing nature of the state of Texas, which, as we've talked about earlier, has gone from a solid red state to now, I think, a slightly red state. I think in the end, Biden's going to get really close in this state as I look at the numbers, very close, closer than any presidential candidate in 40 some odd years. But I don't think he's going to have enough. It's those last 2 or 3 points that are really hard, really close. The other thing I'm going to say is what's played out in Florida Florida is not playing out in Texas. So I think I'd counsel everybody to not interpret one place as meaning it's going to affect another place. The Hispanic vote here went really well for Joe Biden, much better than Donald Trump did here last time among the Hispanic vote. So I just counsel everybody that one state, Florida, may be about Florida, but it may not necessarily be about others.
What are we seeing, thank you, Matt, in the exit polls in Texas, David?
You know, similar to what Matt Dowd was saying, you know, some pretty decent exit polls for the president, though, who's looking at this, 55% approve. But to Matt's point on the Latino vote, which is significant, 59% went for Joe Biden, though I'll point out that Hillary Clinton had 61% 4 years ago. So Joe Biden still has some room to grow there if he's going to match her numbers.
Okay, coming up on 10 p.m. in the East, polls are going to close in 4 more states. We'll be right back.
Going a little bit in Trump's direction. So are we to believe that that had an impact, that it drove out more of the base vote for him in some of these places, or are these numbers telling us that it didn't?
Well, we know that Donald Trump's base is Donald Trump's base, and they're fired up for him. They will vote. They will stand out in the freezing cold to go to a rally. They will do anything. So turning up his base wasn't really a big problem for him. The question is, were they counter-motivators for Democrats in those urban areas who see Trump on television 5 times a day and think about the coronavirus spread factor and that stuff, and that they get fired up to go vote too?
We're going to make some calls. You're not even in with the decision desk, but I want to ask you one more thing. Trump's biggest vulnerability, as you see it right now on this map, Biden's biggest vulnerability, as you see it right now on this map.
Just think of the Mason-Dixon line. Anything south of the Mason-Dixon line, that south of the border of Pennsylvania, that Joe Biden wins, is big trouble for Donald Trump. And conversely, any contested state north of the Mason-Dixon line that Trump can win is real good news for him among the contested states. And we've got a bunch clustered right now that we're ready. It sounds like you know more than I do, but we got a lot of popcorn ready to pop.
And we're watching you on Virginia. So I just want to put you on notice.
Oh, yeah.
We're watching.
He's got all your chips on that.
Thank you, Chris.
You bet.
So the Fox News decision desk, mine is Chris Stirewalt for just a minute, has made some decisions that we want to share with you. President Trump will defeat former Vice President Joe Biden in the state of South Carolina tonight decisively.
And a big one, Fox News can also project that Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina will win re-election by defeating Democratic challenger Jamie Harrison, who managed to throw a scare into Graham, a big one, during a hard-fought campaign. Lindsey Graham will not say his website on any more interviews. He has managed to hold off and will win in South Carolina, and that is a big thing for the Republicans, Chris Wallace, because Lindsey Graham, he was threatened. They thought that Harrison could really take him out.
Yeah, and Harris raised an enormous amount of money, tens of millions of dollars, a real money machine pouring in there. But that was never a toss-up, and that was never leaning Democratic. It was, he got a scare, and he had to campaign probably harder than he thought he was going to have to. But I think this was kind of what people in the end thought was going to happen.
You know, I just want to pop in there and say I think this was about money. It was $100 million that he was able to raise.
That's
a Democrat, it's unbelievable. And similarly, you think about what happened in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You know, again, just a boatload of money from the Democrats. And what do you see in both cases? They were going after Republican senators that they saw as too close to Donald Trump.
But you wonder if the Senate Judiciary Chairman changed his fate when he ran that Amy Coney Barrett hearing in the last final days after Ruth Bader Ginsburg's
Certainly felt that it helped him in the end there. So the polls will be closing in 4 more states on the other side of this break. Chief among them, the state of Iowa, which has been very interesting to watch in this cycle. The president has surged there in recent days in the Des Moines Register poll. We're going to have all the latest from the battlegrounds that hold the keys to 2020 when we come back.
It's getting good.
I'd like to tell you about my great-grandmother.
My grandma.
My cousin.
My great-great-grandmother. She was all of 4 feet 11, but very tenacious.
Very independent woman. Driven, passionate. Grit, perseverance.
She marched.
She wrote. She demanded. She was proud to pass on legacy of civic-mindedness to her descendants. I'm very proud to carry.
Let's go back to the other one.
Welcome to Disney Plus.
Streaming the election.
Are you ready? Drop in and explore. The action, the adventure, and the originals. There's no limit to what you'll find. These are your worlds. So come on, dive deeper into the universes you love. Wherever and whenever you want them, you'll find them all here on Disney Plus.
Now could be a good time to have another baby.
Are you crazy? I'm in love with you. No.
See what else is going on.
See some really strong numbers and averages.
Garbage.
Closely as well as we count down to the next race calls.
Garbage.
From Arizona, Lindsey Graham will retain his seat in South Carolina. Welcome back now our Bloomberg contributors, Rick Davis of Stone Court Capital, who ran John McCain's 2008 presidential campaign, and Jeannie Zaino, Iona College political science professor and senior advisor with Applied Techonomics. So, Rick, big win for Lindsey Graham.
Big win for Lindsey Graham. He really got a boost at the end of the.
I think a 64%. 64% going for Trump at the time. So we're getting more of that in now. They didn't have over 50% of the vote counted quite yet. So probably within a half hour, we should have a much better number coming from Stark County. And of course, from many of the other counties of the 88 across the state.
Gotcha. Madison, does Pennsylvania always go, does Pennsylvania always go the way Ohio goes? I mean, I grew up when I was a kid right on the Ohio-Pennsylvania border, and they seemed like the same place where I was. Is that pretty norm for the election, or do they ever go this way?
They don't always go the same. I think there's been other elections in which we've seen them, one go one way, one go the other. However, there are a lot of similar interests, especially right now when you see a large attack on the energy industry, on fracking, on oil, by the Democrats, by Kamala Harris herself, by Joe Biden, despite the fact that they wanted to lie about this to voters. President Trump and his campaign did an incredible job of getting that video up there on the internet, getting it up there on the big screens at many of the rallies over the past 2 weeks, showing those instances where the other candidates in the other party mentioned specifically, in multiple interviews during debates that they want to end fracking. They want to, go away from traditional energy. And that's a major problem for voters in these states because a lot of people's jobs and families depend on that.
Yeah, and it definitely didn't look good, Madison, when Biden, if you remember, during one of the debates, told Trump, yeah, well, roll the tape on that, or he challenged him to talk about fracking. That's right. Put it on the website. And then I think within 5 minutes at the end of that debate, there was that whole reel of Biden saying, "We're going to get rid of fracking. We're going to end the fracking practice." What fracking? That's when he's not speaking in utter gibberish as he has in the last few days, which we're all supposed to ignore. But Jesse and I will stay focused on.
We see the video coming out, I think, yesterday, where he literally is supposed to be walking off stage, takes his mask off, and is trying to go to the mic. One more thing, and they're pulling him off, saying, "No more things. Joe Biden, let's go."
I don't want to get into why Biden.
Yeah, that's a presidential candidate, and they're dragging him off the stage. I've never seen anything like it.
It's too early from my perspective to get into the Democrat lessons learned. However, no matter what happens tonight, there's certainly a lot of space here to point out that, Joe Biden has had, to call them gaffes is polite, and to say that some of the areas, look, to win this Democrat primary, he flatly had to cozy up to a radical left-wing Democrat party. And people, especially when, as you point out, Madison, places like Ohio, when it's going to affect their jobs and their ability to pay their mortgage, when all of a sudden it goes to the general election and he's your buddy Joe Biden who just rides the choo-choo and has a lunch pail and he's, blue-collar Joe and all this stuff. First of all, he rides the Acela in like a private car. It's like flying first class, okay? It's not some, old-timey thing where he's, putting the coal in the furnace himself. But anyway, I think people remember, that he's essentially, with this fracking stuff and a lot of the jobs in Ohio and Pennsylvania that depend on it, a lot of fakery from him, Madison, and people remember that. They don't like dishonesty like that when it affects them.
No, of course they don't like dishonesty, and it's not just that issue that we've seen dishonesty coming out of the Biden camp. We've seen it on the issue of Hunter Biden and potential, foreign or meddling when it comes to Joe Biden using his influence to obtain personal wealth for himself and his family. We saw major issues there, and of course the fact that he was in Washington for 47 years and he was all talk, no action, and on a lot of issues he actually harmed people. We look at the 1994 crime bill and what that did to many Black American families across this country, and he says now, oh, well, it was a mistake. Well, it didn't feel like a mistake to people who won't get those years of their lives back, and so as a result of criminal justice reform, many families have been reunited and made whole again by President Trump. They had 8 years under the Obama-Biden administration to do things like this. They didn't. They were all talk, no action. And I think a lot of people realize that. They see that. And this is just one example of many issues in which I think we'll see an underperformance for Biden as a result of people, looking at that. I think Trump will receive more of the Black vote this time around than in 2016. He definitely is receiving more of the Hispanic vote in Miami, and that's wonderful to see because I think he has been a president who has proven himself in terms of promises made, promises kept, which many were skeptical of in 2016.
Madison, I know it's impossible to predict the future, but I mean, unless you're me, but I know it's impossible to predict the future as far as where votes are going to go. Do you view the GOP as keeping a hold of this higher percentage of, say, the Black vote in the future? Or is this just simply a matter of Trump goes in there and actually got things done for the Black community, and now he's facing against the guy who you can actually point to him and be like, he threw people in prison that shouldn't have been there? Is it just that simple, or is this an actual trend?
Well, I'm hoping that it's an actual trend, and I hope it's a trend as a result of changes made within the Republican Party, changes in which they learn from not only the Republican Party's mistakes, but they learn from the Democratic Party's mistakes. We don't want to see, as conservatives, our party, that we closely align with, take votes for granted. We don't want to see people go back to the same old in Washington, because as we know, it hasn't been just Democrats that have broken their promises to us. It's been Republicans and Democrats. And so we want to move forward, and we want to see more people elected, not only to, the White House, but to Congress, to, the Senate, coming from the state of Ohio, coming from states all across the country that keep their promises, that work hard for their constituents, that aren't owned by special interests, that produce results for the communities that voted for them and the ones that didn't, people who make lives better, because that's what they're there to do, and we don't see enough of it. We see people that go, they collect their paychecks, they don't do much of anything in Washington, they get nothing done. You see Congress people who maybe are there for 10, 20 years, they don't even pass bills, they don't compromise, they don't reach across the aisle, and who hurts as a result of that? It's the American people, it's the constituents that they were elected to represent that we pay for with our taxpayer money. We're looking at over, I think, $77 million a year, and just House-based salaries alone that we pay. It's crazy when you think about it, how little they get done and how much we're paying them as Americans. So
Madison,
it's something forward. I hope we see a change.
I just want to ask, because I know you're very plugged in Ohio, and we've done a bit of a deep dive with you on that, but there's also a lot of eyes to some of your neighboring states to the west, specifically Michigan, Wisconsin. Some people put Minnesota in there. Although I don't know, Jesse, it's been a crazy night, but I would think Michigan and Wisconsin are certainly states that everyone's watching very closely right now as the early numbers come in. Can you extrapolate, either based on what you're seeing from those states or just the trend as it has played out more so in Ohio, for what we are seeing at this early stage in Michigan and Wisconsin?
Yeah, I think it's too early, obviously, to call those two states specifically. However, we saw a big upset in both of them in 2016. And I don't think that when you look at what Joe Biden has to offer to those states, that it's necessarily going to benefit them any more than what Hillary Clinton had to offer, and maybe even less. So I do expect that we could see big wins in those two states again. I definitely think President Trump's message resonated with many people in Michigan, just like we saw in Pennsylvania. You saw the ridiculously large turnout for some of these rallies over the past 2 weeks in those states. So I think we could see some incredible wins tonight. There's a chance we could even win this election by a larger number in the Electoral College than what we saw in 2016, which would be truly incredible because at the very, very most, when you turn on the mainstream media or you look at the pollsters, they said we might squeak out a win, but most of them said we were going to lose. So it could be really, really great to see, once again, a complete upset in which we shock the world as we did in 2016.
If Trump breaks 300 Electoral College votes again, it's not a red wave, it's a red tsunami.
Absolutely.
They only have themselves to blame.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll all be
they only have
celebrating a bit.
themselves to blame for being stupid.
Thanks so much, Madison. Good to see you.
Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Take care. Jesse, looking good so far.
I'm trying. Look, Buck, you're not going to hold me back anymore with this Eeyore routine. My hopes are officially up. We're going to talk to Bill O'Reilly about it. And you know what? Bill's not bringing me down either. We will be right back.
Hey, I got a scary first-hand look of a brutal cybercrime called home title theft. I saw it firsthand with a friend, and you do not want this to happen to you. Home title.
Okay, let's go back to the other one.
On her story. Find their stories. Make them count. At Ancestry.
What's going on?
How can we find the best climate solutions? We look for a light, one bright enough to inspire us all to work together. Right now, America's natural gas and oil companies continue to lower emissions worldwide, all while fulfilling essential energy needs. Together, we can keep the U.S. the world leader in reducing emissions. See how American innovation lights the way at energyforprogress.org.
These are real people, not actors, who've got their eczema under control. With less eczema, you can show more skin. So roll up those sleeves and help heal your skin from within with Dupixent. Dupixent is the first treatment of its kind that continuously treats moderate to severe eczema or atopic dermatitis, even between flare-ups. Dupixent is a biologic and not a cream or steroid. Many people taking Dupixent saw clear or almost clear skin and had significantly less itch. Don't use if you're allergic to Dupixent. Serious allergic reactions can occur, including anaphylaxis, which is severe. Tell your doctor about new or worsening eye problems, such as eye pain or vision changes, or a parasitic infection. If you take asthma medicines, don't change or stop them without talking to your doctor. So help heal your skin from within and talk to your eczema specialist about Dupixent. If your financial situation has changed, we may be able to help.
To our coverage, election 2020, and we have a lot of states in play right now. We have a lot of things cooking, a lot of raw vote total that's coming in addition to our voter analysis. And the next polls will close in just a matter of seconds. And when they do, we will make some more calls. It's starting to get where anything can pop at any moment.
Yeah, these Senate races are coming in quickly as well. As we said, Senator Graham hangs on to his seat. We're watching the Tillis race in North Carolina closely as well as we count down to the next race calls.
It is 10 o'clock here in New York City. Polls have just closed in another 4 states. Let's start with Iowa, where President Trump is locked in a close race with former Vice President Joe Biden. According to our decision desk, it's too early to project a winner in Iowa. The other state we're watching very closely at this hour is Nevada, where our vote analysis shows Biden ahead of Trump at the moment, although we'll need to analyze a lot more data from Nevada before making a call there.
Meanwhile, President Trump is ahead of the former vice president in a pair of western states. The first is Utah, home to Republican Senator Mitt Romney, and is a frequent Trump critic, as we well know. And the other is Montana, a traditional Republican stronghold. Our decision desk still not quite ready to declare winners in either of those states yet tonight.
So if we look at our electoral map, where it stands right now and our lovely standing candidates, it is 129 to 109. Remember that 270 is the magic number to win the presidency. And you see those yellow states, obviously those have closed. but we have not called them yet, and that is where this race is really being battled. You have North Carolina. We have Florida that we haven't called yet, although Donald Trump has a big lead now in Florida.
And as these results continue to come in tonight, let's bring in Tucker Carlson once again, host of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Tucker, great to talk to you tonight. Obviously, this is a historic evening, always, when the nation comes together to elect a president. This has been a very hard-fought race, and we still have so much that's undecided. Your thoughts at 10:01 Eastern?
I think Mitt Romney had lost by this point when he ran for president. So there's a lot to learn, of course, and I sincerely don't know what the outcome will be, but I just cannot get over my total surprise at the disconnect between what we're watching on the screen and what has been confidently predicted across the media landscape for months. That there was a very good chance of a blue wave, of a total Biden blowout, of an early night. And I could get much more specific about this, and I think we'll probably spend the next couple of months doing that because it's worth doing. But suffice it to say, and anyone watching and who's consumed any media this year knows that the media, even on the basis of the data we have now, got it really wrong. And they'll claim they didn't because they always do, but they did. And we know that. And why is this a problem? It's a problem because in the end, we know who the president is because the media tell us who the president is. The campaign manager for the Joe Biden effort today sent out a tweet saying a bunch of other news organizations, the second the media declared Joe Biden the president, he will begin, in effect, acting like the president. So you can't really overstate the role of the media in adding legitimacy and conveying legitimacy to the winner. We're not just observers, we're participants, as much as we hate to admit it. So given all of that, it really matters whether or not we're credible. And I would say in some very specific ways, we, the media, I participated in it for 30 years, have not been credible. We have lost trust. And that's just, I think that's really bad. And it's something that we need to fix. And the obvious problem is something we said we were going to correct in 2016, which is we don't know anybody who votes for Trump. And so you really got the sense watching everybody that, like, you know, it's kind of embarrassing to support Trump or whatever. And that's why the rallies were such a huge shock to a lot of people. In the last week, all these people unapologetically saying, I love Donald Trump. And it's like, I've never met anybody who says something. Who are these people? We have a huge problem in our business with being cut off from the country we cover. And I would say a lot of power centers in this country have that problem, but we have it in the media, and I really sincerely hope we fix it because we're moving toward like zero credibility, and that's bad.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Molly Hemingway earlier in the show about
away in Ohio when they were trying to call it
supporters feeling like he was not running only against Joe Biden, but was running against a lot of the media as well. He couldn't get on some of those rallies. We aired rallies from Democrats and the president throughout this process, but they always felt like it was an uphill battle. He still has a path to 270 tonight, and as Britt mentions every few minutes, the betting odds are increasing for President Trump.
Well, they are, and I have to say, because I think I'm bitter about it, and it's worth being bitter about. We found out in the final days of this campaign that members of the president's family were under an active FBI investigation into business deals that we, I think, pretty conclusively proved he knew about, parts of which he approved of. Tony Bobulinski was a direct participant in those conversations with the former vice president. I'm not accusing him of a crime. I'm merely saying he was involved. And that story was utterly squelched. Bobulinski's name wasn't mentioned on any other channel apart from Fox News. It was completely ignored on purpose, not because it wasn't newsworthy. It most certainly was newsworthy, but because they were taking a partisan position on behalf of a presidential candidate. Now, it's not just a matter of being annoyed that the media are liberal or whatever. They've always been liberal. That's fine. I'm not mad about that. I accept it as reality.
Other people's
Why it's scary is that on a night like tonight, the whole country, 350 million of us, will only know who the president is when the media tell us. And so it's very important for the media to behave in ways that allow us to trust them. It's important for the future of the country, I think.
Tucker, as always, thank you. It's
thank you.
Great to have your perspective on election night. We've got our panel looking deep into these numbers. Karl Rove, Katie Pavlich down in Brazil. Donald, let me start with you. There are some of these calls that we haven't made yet, but seem to be going a little bit more towards Donald Trump's way. What are you seeing?
Well, first of all, we're looking at states that Donald Trump carried in 2016, either by a percentage point or, less than 4%. So I'm not surprised at where the numbers are now. More data needs to come in. More numbers need to come in. What I'm seeing right now,
why
still,
is this
again,
bitch
I'm an
on here?
optimist. I still believe that there's
She
a path
rigged
for Joe
the
Biden.
fucking
Wait. You still believe there's a
DNC
path?
election for
There
Hillary.
were like 7 paths when we started. You say that there's a path?
No, I haven't changed my prediction. I still believe that Joe Biden has several paths. Look, we haven't called Georgia, we haven't called North Carolina. Things are trending in Donald Trump's direction in Florida. Ohio is still up. Pennsylvania has not come in. Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas, Wisconsin. So the night is still young. So I'm not ready to light a cigar or pop open a good bottle of champagne because there's a lot of votes that are still outstanding.
Yeah, we've got states all across the bottom of your screen right now that are too early to call, all of which are very important states in this. Carl, I want to ask you about this from Philadelphia. There's a report from Politico that says that Philadelphia officials say that they will not be reporting any more mail ballots tonight. About 76,000 have been tallied so far out of 350,000 that have been received. Does that surprise you? And, everybody obviously is watching Pennsylvania really closely. We'll probably be watching it for many days to come, it looks like.
Well, first of all, secure the ballots. Let's make certain that's done. I am a little surprised because, you'd think they'd want to get this done, and we know that Pennsylvania is going to it's going to be Friday before they're able to sort of cut it off. This is a state that was supposed to have all the mail-in ballots received by tonight, by close of business, but instead they used some administrative measures and a court decision to move it till Friday. So I'd keep the people at it, but they may just say our progress is such, give them the benefit of the doubt. Our progress is such that we don't need to work 24 hours a day. We can get this thing done in the next day or two, and certainly before the deadline of Friday. But it's better that we have these contests settled sooner rather than later, even if it is an unofficial count and has to be subsequently certified by the Secretary of State.
Carl, while we have you, where are you on Texas? Are you bullish on Trump, Texas?
Texas, our Texas, all hail the mighty state. Of course, it's going to be red. John Cornyn.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted a musical interlude here. Can I say something about North Carolina?
Wait. So you're done with Texas? You think it's GOP?
Yes. Just a little ditty.
The Republicans will carry it on the presidential level. I'm looking at the number. Senator Cornyn is running like 6 points ahead of his Democratic challenger, despite the fact that something like $50 million has spent in the last 6 weeks, including $28 million by
This
Silicon
is what's
Valley
ridiculous
Icon
about
in the
U.S.
last week.
politics, and I'm going to say it.
And not only that, but the Republicans are going to
I'm
keep
pretty
the
sure
State
there's
House of
others
Representatives, which, as
who
I
are
said
gonna
earlier,
say
is
it
just
too.
a gigantic amount of money.
Fucking
Texas, but we're going to hold on to
millions of dollars on an election for president that you're only going to make $400,000
just
from.
noticed that
They need to fucking really put a limit on
Tom
everyone's
Tillis is now leading in the Senate race. And what's interesting to me is
funding
it's a handful of counties.
On
Mecklenburg,
Senate,
which is Charlotte,
presidential,
Wake, which is
House,
Raleigh,
mayor,
Greensboro,
governor,
which is surprisingly enough, Greensboro.
re-elections
They're sort of
or
mostly all
elections.
in. And what was happening
It should be
is
about
a handful of counties,
what you're going to do for the people you're representing, not how much money you're going to fucking make or spend to do this. It's fucking ridiculous.
Union County,
I mean,
which
shit.
is just to the east of Charlotte.
You look back,
and,
I'm going to mute this. You look back at 2015-16 when Trump did the thing. He went up against 17 Republicans to get the nomination. He spent $10 million of his own money, while all those Republicans spent well over $500 million to try to get the nomination. When it was him versus Hillary, he spent $30 million out of his own pocket, and Hillary had donations from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, China, Russia, and other countries, not only the Democrats, and she spent almost $300 million trying to win the seat. Donald Trump only spent like $30 million, 1/10 of it. it shouldn't be about the fucking money on politics. It should be about what the fucking candidate is going to do for the country. I don't give a shit how much money you spend to try to get a $400,000 job. That would be me spending $1 million in advertisement to get a minimum wage job at McDonald's. It's fucking stupid. You get on TV, you plead your case, you show your points, and then you fucking rely on the voters. Money isn't what's going to win you an election. It's fucking stupid. They need to really redo the whole election finance committee and force all these people that are on here doing this shit, force all these people, here you go, you get $30 million, period. That's all you get for your advertisements and everything.
The ticket here
you don't get
that
to
has
spend
been trying to
a
explain
single
away
cent
losing
more.
states
And if
like
you
Florida,
do,
Georgia,
you're disqualified
obviously still in play.
immediately.
We may not have the results now from Fulton County as a result of the water main break for a couple of days, according to election officials there. But in terms of Philadelphia not reporting any more absentee ballots tonight, and that may be taking a couple of days, the first explainer for that could be that, well, because they had this court ruling that allows absentee ballots to be stamped in the mail past election day, they have some breathing room there in terms of getting them all counted and tallied up in the
Any
vote.
absentee
However,
ballots
there's been
that
this
are
massive controversy with the Attorney General there,
are date
who said
stamped
earlier
after
in
the
week,
election
just
are
yesterday, that
invalid.
as long as all
You
of the
cannot
votes are
vote
counted,
after the election.
President Trump
You
will
vote
lose when he
before or
doesn't
on
know
the election
actual
day, not
outcome of
after.
that race yet. And so it begs the question about what the actual reason is behind them not finishing out the electoral votes tonight in terms of getting the absentee ballots counted and ready to go for the next couple of days.
Yeah, great point. Let's go to Bill
Trump's
Hemmer,
now ahead
who
in
is
North
at the
Carolina.
board,
Hey
of
guys.
course.
And they were trying to
Bill,
declare that.
what have you got up there? After you look at that, I'd love to look at Arizona and get your thoughts on that.
Sure
but
will.
Where are we starting here?
Guys, I'm going to give you a spin around here, okay? Because there is a lot of action in these battleground states right now. What the Trump campaign is saying that their election day vote is now coming home. They're also suggesting in northeastern PA that blue-collar workers are going for President Trump. Well, let's see if that's the case. 28% of the vote in right now, a small lead for President Trump over Joe Biden. We've been saying it for a while now. Pennsylvania is not going to be able to be called tonight. Is that the case? We believe that to be the case. But look on up here. This is Lackawanna County. Still some votes to be had out there. This is Scranton, PA. This is where Joe Biden lived until the age of 9, until he moved to Delaware in 2016. For comparison's sake, well over 100,000 votes in Lackawanna. So we got a little bit of ways to go here, just about half the vote in that county. So we'll see whether or not the Trump team thinks that blue-collar vote in northeastern PA is coming their way. A couple more things I want to show you guys. This is North Carolina now. This is 0.6% in favor of Donald Trump. We saw it flip just about 10 minutes ago. Some more votes coming in. Carl talked about this county here. That's Perkins. Just a moment ago, it clicked in. The president has about a 2,500 vote lead in this far northeastern rural county in North Carolina. So if this stays now with about 10% more the vote in the Tar Heel state, the president's going to pick up 15 electoral votes in North Carolina, which was,
they need to show what's going on with Virginia, because they declared Virginia Biden, Virginia is showing Trump was ahead,
Joe Biden here,
18% and 300,000 votes.
Right now. Remember, 4 years ago it was about 7.5. So he's starting to hit his margins with 20% of the vote still outstanding. We talked about the map expanding. Well, let's show you how that's happening here. This is Michigan. Been watching this now. You got a third of the vote in right at the moment. A big part of the vote down here in Wayne County, Detroit, is not in yet, so we're going to watch that. Further west in Wisconsin, that grows larger, right? 38% in. The president's slight lead. I would caution you on this only because this is Milwaukee down here, is Green Bay up here. This is Milwaukee County. You've got a lot of votes that have not yet been tallied. Milwaukee tends to run later into the night, so we'll see how this measures up. This is Dane County, by the way. That's where Madison is. That's where the University of Wisconsin is located. He had a ton of votes for Hillary Clinton 4 years ago, so Joe Biden hasn't yet hit that mark. She had 217,000 and 75%, so he's 144. So I would imagine in a liberal county like Dane County, Wisconsin, that there's more votes out there for Democrats to be had. One other thing I think is curious, the Trump team told me a bit earlier tonight that they had about half a dozen counties in Wisconsin that ran out of ballots, and they had to go out and get more. Some of them are right here in the center part of the state, Juneau County. There's not a ton of votes to be had anyway. Nonetheless, though, Wood County, just north of it, they ran out of ballots apparently, had to gather more. Perhaps they filed
How can you run out of ballots if it's all electronic?
Fill the void for that. The reason I bring that up, you got a 6,000 vote margin at the moment in Wood County alone in Wisconsin. Why does that matter? Just pop out here a moment to 2016. I mean, this is razor tight, right? We're talking 23,000, 22,000 votes in Wisconsin. All these votes now matter in 2020 from the rural areas that Donald Trump, he's been going there, he's been campaigning, he's been working hard for Wisconsin. The campaign thinks they've got a shot. I talked with one of the high-ranking members of the campaign a bit earlier today. They had a split opinion, actually. One gentleman thought Pennsylvania was more likely to flip toward Trump. The other thought Wisconsin was. I don't know if either one is right, but they were laying odds a bit earlier today based on what they were seeing from the results tonight. You mentioned Arizona. Martha, let's go check it out, okay? You know, this is Maricopa County. This is Phoenix. You've got about 71% of the vote tally. By the way, it's the first time I've seen it. I think it's the first time you guys have seen it too, right? Joe Biden with a slight lead here now at 54 to 44. This is Maricopa. This is, look, you win your elections here in Pima County with Tucson and up here in Maricopa. At the moment, 54-44. That's a 10-point edge. Let's see what they did 4 years ago. Donald Trump, pretty impressive, 51-48, so there's more votes to be had there as well. Come back to 2020, and we'll see how much more we get in here in Arizona in a moment. 11 electoral votes. We knew they closed at 9. They would not report until 10 o'clock. It's about 10:17 East Coast time, and they're rolling in, guys.
So in Arizona, like those other states, the early vote we've seen from our voter analysis survey goes 6 out of 10 towards Biden in pretty much every state. But then the vote seems to fill in, as we've seen in these other states.
Yeah, it's the same trend, right, Brett? I mean, the skew is blue, and then it changes throughout the course of the night. I mean, that's been the pattern back here.
What's going on with Virginia? Because Virginia
that's been
was
the
showing Trump
down here
ahead.
North
Because
Carolina.
like earlier I showed Rhode Island,
yeah,
Trump was ahead,
and
and
also
they
I would suggest at the moment, with a little more than half the vote in,
here.
Georgia's shaping up to be the same way.
Yeah, I mean, this whole question about
2020 just like that, isn't it?
Yeah, about whether there's a path through the Sun Belt or through the Rust Belt. You know, we're starting to see that Sun Belt area. That's why I wanted to take a look at Arizona, and I saw that there's a pretty decent gap right now between Martha McSally and Mark Kelly, in favor of Mark Kelly, at least at this point. We've got, I think we have about 71% of the vote in the state in. So one to watch as we get a little bit closer to that one.
All right, Bill, thank you.
Talk you back later.
So the polls are closed in the biggest toss-up states in the race for the White House. We're going to bring you all the latest data from our decision desk as it comes in. Plus, Laura Ingraham is on deck to join us as our Democracy 2020 coverage rolls on after this.
Our retirement plan with Voya gives us
New York,
confidence.
only 33% gave it to Biden. Wow. But here in Ohio, they haven't given it to
well
Trump.
Planned, well invested, well protected.
Voya, be
Typical
confident
media
through
bias.
retirement.
All OTC
They don't want
payment
Trump
including
to
Voltaire,
know he's
have
winning.
one thing in common. None are proven stronger
But they
or more
want to
effective
give
against
false
pain
hope
than
to all those
Salonpas patch large.
Democrats.
There's surprising power in this patch. Salonpas. Dependable, powerful relief.
Sharing smiles together is a gift. At Aspen Dental, it's easy to gift yourself the smile you deserve. New patients, get started with a comprehensive exam and full set of x-rays with no obligation. And if you don't have insurance, it's free. Plus, get 20% off your treatment plan. Enjoy flexible payment options and savings when it matters most. We're here to make your smile shine bright so you can start the new year feeling all right. Call 1-800-ASPEN-DENTAL 7 days a week or book today at aspendental.com.
Hey, Tony, what you doing?
I'm reviewing some of Tubi's best plays. They got such a deep bench of free movies and television shows. There's always a perfect play.
Tubi, download now on all your favorite devices.
Here's a hint about how to make working from home less stressful and more comfortable. Make the switch to X-Chair. Infinite side-float recline and dynamic variable lumbar support make the X-Chair a customer favorite at home and work. The X-Chair lets you customize for the same measure of amazing comfort no matter what your size. Every model is in stock, ready to ship the next day. And you can get $100 off any model on our website. Your new normal? Incredibly comfortable. Call or click to order today.
When we started our business, we were paying like an arm and a leg for the postage. I remember setting up ShipStation. I think it was just like 1 or 2 clicks. Everything was up and running. I was printing out labels and saving money.
ShipStation saves us so much time. It makes it really easy and seamless. Pick an order, print everything you need, slap the label onto the box, and it's ready to go.
Our cost for shipping, like, we're cut in half, just like that.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers. Go to shipstation.com/try and get 2 months free.
Welcome back. On your screen, a look at where this race stands at this hour in Florida. Take a look there. 91% of the precincts in. Donald Trump, 51.3% to 47.8%. In Georgia, there you go. 56% of the precincts in, and
they're not counting in the ones
again,
that
some of that other
Trump
vote
is
as we
winning.
talked about, and then North Carolina, a very close race there in North Carolina, but 91% of the precincts in.
Biden,
again, all of those too early to call at this hour.
And let's take a look at the overall electoral map as it stands right now in the race to 270. Joe Biden at 129, President Trump at 109, and you see the percentage there, 48.2 to 50.2 as we stand. 0.3 as we stand this evening. Things are changing by the second at 10:22. So let's get some thoughts tonight from Laura Ingraham, host of the Ingraham Angle, who joins us with her thoughts on how things are looking so far. Laura, at this point in the evening, we've got some information and quite a bit more to come in.
Yeah, well, the in-person votes usually are the last to be counted, except with the mail-in ballots that are going to be rolling in, postmarked today. So we have to keep that in mind. But I think when we look at Florida and focusing on the GOP for a moment, Martha and Brett, the coalition that the Republicans have been able to put together in that state is really something that they should try to replicate as much as possible going forward up and down the East Coast with a strong contingent of seniors, Latinos, young professionals, African Americans. The Republicans have outperformed, it looks like tonight, across all of those categories with higher turnouts than they had in 2016. So there was a lot of talk about how Biden was going to bring all these new voters to the fore, and indeed we'll probably find that he did. But the other story, which I think you're seeing playing out in state after state tonight, is that Trump brought more people into the party and then expanded the base from those blue-collar workers on out. So we'll see what happens as the night goes forward. But to me, Florida is the future for the Republican Party.
You know, Laura, this is just an interesting thing, and you talk about this all the time, about the president's policies toward China, being tough on China. Right now, according to the Wall Street Journal, the Chinese yuan has started to tank.
I just saw that.
And
what is that? Yeah.
What does that tell you?
It's very significant because it means, at least so far in the evening, they're looking at the betting odds, and I know you've probably talked about that already tonight.
Brett has.
Yeah, 64% on the overseas betting now lean toward Trump. And the Chinese are watching all of this, and right now they are indicating to us that they believe the tariffs that Donald Trump put on a whole swath of Chinese goods, they're here to stay for the foreseeable future. And that obviously hurts their currency, at least in the short term. So that's a significant metric, but it's just how they're reading the data that's coming in right now. But I have to say, when we look at the sheer numbers of people who've turned out to vote, we had a very engaged electorate this election season. And there are a lot of people who've said that, you know, Joe Biden made a smart call and running on the pandemic and hanging back and letting Trump, you know, go out there and dominate the stage because people were tired of Trump. I think that was a, you know, really misguided way of looking at things. I think, as you saw after he recovered from COVID, he has been nonstop. And I think a lot of folks, as time went on, began to really respect that he was fighting, in their mind, for every vote that he could get in those swing states. And it was a breakneck pace. Obviously, Joe Biden could not keep up with that or didn't want to keep up with it. And those crowds, which, again, a lot of people didn't want to talk about, they were a metric of energy and excitement that I just did not see replicated on the other side.
Right here. Rhode Island. They're declaring it for Biden. This has been going on for 4 hours now. They declared it for Biden, yet Trump is winning 53% to 44%. What the fuck is this bullshit? How can you declare it for the loser when the president is winning it?
The emotion of it, for whatever that's worth tonight. And I think in the end, the love for the country, the love for the average worker, they're going to say trumped the dislike that the left has for Donald Trump, his tone and tweets and some of his past comments.
Laura, a lot of people have wanted the president, people who support him, have wanted him to focus more on the economy and on recovering from coronavirus. He really swung around to that in a stronger way in the final days as he campaigned through the course of these rallies. The NASDAQ futures are up over 3% this evening, and it just reminds me of the discussion that was had in 2016. And I want to keep reiterating, we got a long way to go here in this evening tonight. But it was all doom and gloom that he was going to sort of make all the markets crash, and I think.
And here's for Virginia, right here. Trump is up 52 to 45%, 53 to 45%. How the hell is Biden the winner of Virginia when Trump is ahead? See, this is bullshit. This is showing it right here live. It's bullshit. Print screen. I'm going to take pictures of this. Paste.
President Trump seems to be putting in a strong showing, and investors like that. So the gains of the stock market that we saw on Monday and Tuesday, 1,000 points up on the Dow, that is holding. And Brett, I got to tell you, this is very important to ordinary people, if I can put it like that. Investing is no longer the area of just
never ever recover. The stock market would never ever recover.
Yeah, well, it was going to be. Yeah, Martha, you hit the nail on the head. In the spring, it was the Great Depression was coming. It was going to be not just a long dark winter. It was going to be a long dark decade. We heard some people saying, was it going to be a decade before we'd recover? How can any incumbent president overcome a depression, a pandemic, and in concern about his tone? That was never possible. And I've got to say, for whatever people think about Donald Trump, the personality, he never gave up on his winning formula of policies, which is America first, enforce the border, tighten the labor market, see wages go up, which you saw $6,000 for the average family income, median family income through the last year. These were significant advances for African Americans, Latinos.
See if I can find other stuff.
Because of all of those ballots. So there's still a lot to work out, but you're right. All of those places seem to be reacting